Committee on State Affairs will come to order. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, LaMantia, Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, here. Schwartner, Zaffarini, present. Paxton, Hughes. Here.
Good evening. We thank everyone for working with us and the Senate services and folks who do double duty to get everything set up for us so quickly after the Senate is not using the hall. We'll try to move through the agenda as quickly as we can. Of course, everybody who wants to testify will be testified, will be given a good hearing. This time the chair lays out House Bill 315. House Bill 315 by Representative Cortez, and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Zaffarini, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, House Bill 315 by Representative Philip Cortez relates to a statement by the Secretary of State regarding the furnishing of certain personal information on an application for a ballot to be voted by mail. Generally, members, the bill would require the Secretary of State to include with mail ballots a statement explaining the benefits of supplying the voter's telephone number and how doing so assists the early voting clerk, and to make that statement available on the agency's website. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions, members, for the sponsor? Very well. We'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Ed Johnson. Mr. Johnson is here. Ed is the only witness we have registered on for or against House Bill 315. If anyone else wishes to testify, please register at the kiosk outside the chamber. Mr. Johnson, when you get situated there, introduce yourself, even though we know you, and go ahead with your testimony. Welcome.
Ed Johnson, and here in support of 315. This was when I was working in the Harris County Clerk's election office. This was always a big problem. When a voter would send in an application and they wouldn't have something completed on it, it was hard to get a hold of them in time if they didn't have a phone number on the application, more particularly with their ballot. If you have moved and you require a statement of residence, you have to be able to get in touch with them when they don't send it in to get that sent in so their ballot can be counted. The big thing that should go on the statement is this information, your phone number, under state law is prevented from being under open record request. So it's kept confidential and no one can get to it under current election code.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Johnson. Any questions for the witness? Thanks for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 315? Seeing none, hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills are pending this time. Chair lays out House Bill 409 by Representative Collier, and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Zaffarini, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, House Bill 409 by Representative Nicole Collier relates to the governance and administration of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission and to certain disclosures made in relation to the provision of funding for these services. Generally, members, House Bill 409 would add 2 members to the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. There is a committee substitute, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to send up at this time.
Chair lays out the committee substitute, recognizes its sponsor to explain the substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, generally the committee substitute differs from the bill as engrossed by the House, and that it reflects consensus language developed at the request of the governor's staff and presiding Judge Sharon Keller, Court of Criminal Appeals, and is acceptable to the Indigent Defense Commission. It would specify that the 2 new board members would be, first, to ensure the governor has appointment flexibility, 1 member who is either a director of a managed assigned counsel program in Texas or a person who has a demonstrated experience in indigent defense, and second, to preserve a judicial majority, 1 member who is a justice of the peace, municipal court judge, or appointed magistrate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? Very good. We'll open up public testimony on House Bill 409. The chair calls Honorable J.R. Woolley, testifying for the bill. Judge Woolley is the only witness we have registered to testify on, for, or against House Bill 409. While we're looking for Judge Woolley, I'll ask, is there anyone present wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 409? Seeing none, we will close public testimony, and the bill will be left pending at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Representative Lamontia, are you good on, you ready to go? Thank you very much. The chair lays out House Bill 639 by Representative Lozano and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Lamontia, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 639 increases the number of temporary bingo licenses a qualifying organization may receive on an annual basis. The Charitable Bingo Operations Division of the Texas Lottery Commission regulates all aspects of licensed bingo activities, ensuring bingo games are conducted fairly and that proceeds are used properly. The division offers two types of licenses that a nonprofit may attain to conduct a charitable bingo game: a regular annual conductor license and a non-annual temporary license. Organizations like volunteer fire departments that apply for non-annual licenses rely heavily on charitable bingo games to raise money for operations. Currently, these organizations are only authorized to conduct 6 bingo games a year, which limits fundraising abilities. Previously in this committee, we heard SB 643 by Senator Zaffarini, which doubled the number of bingo games a regular license holder may host per year. HB 639, however, permits non-annual license holders to host 12 bingo games a year. That's up from the current 6, providing twice as many opportunities to raise these much-needed funds. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? Very well. We'll open public testimony. No one has registered to testify on, for, or against House Bill 639. So we ask anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 639. Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 246 by Representative Swanson and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Betancourt, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, the second called special session in the 87th Legislature passed SB 1, which the chairman knows very well. Well, I think we only debated it 6 times. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it was on 5. And among the new requirements was an addition of video surveillance and live stream for all areas contained already in counted ballots. Unfortunately, despite positive reforms, many of the current live stream requirements are then bracketed to counties with a population greater than 100,000, leaving smaller counties with little accessibility or surveillance during these election contests. At the same time, in large counties like Harris County, where the cameras are required by law, the reliability and quality of the video feed can all vary. House Bill 246 authorizes a pilot program where the Secretary of State will select 6 participating counties, varying population, 2 with population between 100,000 and 500, 2 with population between 50,000 and 100, and 2 with population of less than 5,000, require them to use video recording device and record ballot counting at least 20% of the precincts. Pilot program will be operating for next biennium, when the Secretary of State will submit a report to the Legislature on which counties participated, how many precincts were used, best practices for placement, video angle, recording, visibility, clarity, etc. So basically, this is just a follow-up to SB 1, and at this time, be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? Very good. We'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Ed Johnson testifying for House Bill 246. Mr. Johnson is the only witness we have registered at this time, so if anyone wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 246, please make your way to the kiosk outside the chamber, register there. Mr. Johnson, welcome back. Introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
Yes, Ed Johnson, and I am for House Bill 246. This would be very important to help solve election contest problems, to have a record of what's going on in central count. One time in Harris County, we actually had to use this. It was during a primary race. The candidates were accusing the county of not counting ballots And the county was saying that the ballot board never delivered the vote-by-mail ballots, and it just so happened that the county had a camera in the hallway. And it actually went to an FBI investigation, and they looked at the camera in the hallway and found out exactly what happened, that the ballot board didn't deliver the ballots. So you can find out things like this by having a recorded record. It would be very handy in solving a lot of these controversies.
Members, any questions? Mr. Johnson. Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 246? Very well. Public testimony is closed. The bill is left pending at this time.
I'd be happy to.
The chair lays out House Bill 1423 by Representative Campos and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Betancourt, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Member, state law provides for the extension of protective order if the person who is subject of the order is incarcerated on the date of expiration, or if the order is set to expire within a year from the date the person is released from incarceration. This law was enacted to account for victim safety, as perpetrators of family violence may retaliate or continue abusive tactics against victims upon their release. HB 1423 requires a notice to respondents on the order when it's issued that the order will extend if the respondent is incarcerated on or around the expiration date. This ensures that respondents will receive the notice as it's on the order that they have in hand, and victims will have been added as a measure of safety. This bill, together with current provisions of expiration date extension in these cases, clearly directs data entry of the extended expiration date into the Texas Criminal Information Center so that law enforcement and courts have the most updated information and can respond and enforce orders correctly to maintain victim, law enforcement, and community safety. Happy to answer any questions.
Senators, any questions for the sponsor? We'll open up public testimony and ask if anyone wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1423. We're on House Bill 1423. No one is registered. Anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1423? Seeing none, public testimony is closed. The bill is left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 4333 by Representative Garcia and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Menendez, to explain the measure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, appreciate you adding this bill on. Members, in 2019, the 86th Legislature passed House Bill 3529, known as our Reflejo or Reflection Court Bill, creating a family violence pretrial diversion pilot program aimed at working with willing first-time offenders of domestic violence who also struggle with substance abuse issues. This bill simply extends Bexar County's court, which is set to expire later this year. And since 2021, 16 participants successfully graduated from the program, earning case dismissal, expungement, giving them a new set of skills to cope as they return to their families and communities. And as communities across the state have seen a rise in domestic violence following the pandemic, our county needs programs like this court to disrupt the abuse at the source. House Bill 4333 received the backing of the San Antonio Police Department, the City of San Antonio, and Judge Rosie Speedlin Gonzalez, the presiding judge of Bexar County's Court number 13, being the Reflection Court, or Reflejo as we say it in Spanish. That's it.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? Very well. We'll open public testimony on House Bill 4333. Is there anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4333? 4333. Very well. Public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 2291 by Representative Slauson and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Birdwell, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I appreciate the opportunity to lay out 2291 before you. This bill was brought by Representative Slauson and myself by a judge in Hamilton County, Judge Lively, raising concerns of the safety of judges after retirement. Under current statute, there are various places around the state where individuals may not carry a firearm. However, under Penal Code 46.15, there is a list of individuals and occupations that would allow for the carrying of a firearm if the person has a license to carry. This list includes active and retired peace officers, corrections and parole officers, and active judicial judges. This bill seeks to add retired judicial officials to that list of exempted occupations when that retired judge or justice holds a license to carry. Retired peace officers are granted this exemption because they may have an enhanced safety risk resulting from the personal contact with various perpetrators or suspects throughout their career. The same can be said for our retired judicial officials, and I would ask for them to have the same opportunity as the active judicial officials. With that, subject to your questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? We'll open public testimony then on House Bill 2291. Is there anyone present wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2291? Very well. Public testimony is closed. The bill's left pending at this time.
Oh, yeah, booze in schools.
It's a good thing you did the guns before hooch.
I didn't even make that connection.
The other way around would have been a bad call.
Hooch then the guns. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm ready. We did the gun bill. Now let's do the alcohol bill. Those things just go together so well. Yeah.
And then sexual-oriented businesses.
The chair lays out House Bill 1825 by Representative Turner of Tarrant and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Birdwell, to explain the interesting measure.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, under the current Education Code 11.179, the Victoria ISD School Board may adopt a policy allowing the consumption, possession, and sale of an alcoholic beverage at an event held at a performing arts facility owned by the school district if the facility is leased to a nonprofit organization for an event not sponsored or sanctioned by the district. HB 1825 would allow the school board trustees of the Arlington Independent School District to adopt similar policy allowing for alcohol to be served at the Center for Visual and Performing Arts as a standalone complex in Arlington ISD. Currently, the inability to have alcohol at the CVPA, which is Center for Visual and Performing Arts, inhibits many nonprofits from using the venue to host events. This world-class facility is located at the center of Arlington's entertainment district and is more affordable than other venues in the area. This bill would help smaller foundations and organizations help host events in the entertainment district, and events where alcohol could be consumed and served would be limited to events hosted by third parties, so school events would not be included, Mr. Chairman. Okay? Arlington ISD would benefit because the district could then host more events at the CVPA, and we'd ask your favorable adoption or favorable support of House Bill 1825. Subject to your questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Bardwell. Members, any questions for the sponsor on House Bill 1825? Very well. We'll open public testimony. And on House Bill 1825, the chair calls Melody Fowler. Melody Fowler, our school board president in Arlington. Melody's the only witness we have registered at this point to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1825. If anyone else wishes to testify on, for, or against, please register at the kiosk just outside the chamber or with Ms. Babb, and she can fill out a paper card for you. Welcome. When you get situated there, introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you so much. Melody Fowler, and I'm here to support HB 1825. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and Senator Birdwell, I'm Melody Fowler, the president of Arlington ISD Board of Trustees, and I'm here on behalf of the Arlington ISD Board in support of HB 1825. This bill is about the Center for Visual and Performing Arts located in the middle of our school district, accessible to all parents and all campuses. The center is close to AT&T Stadium, Globe Life Stadium, Choctaw Stadium, and Texas Live. In Arlington, there are limited venues for nonprofit and community organizations to host events. The CVPA is a very desirable venue for such events. With the passage of HB 1825, more events could be held at the CVPA, including private art receptions and celebrity performances, just to give you two examples where alcohol service is common in other facilities. As required by existing statute, any events that include the sale or consumption of alcohol will be handled by a nonprofit entity approved through a board-adopted policy. This bill extends the existing law to include the CVPA. As stated in the bill and existing statute, alcohol would not be permissible at any district or school event. Let me emphasize, the sale, possession, or consumption of alcohol will not occur at the CVPA during school hours. The vendor or concessionaire working with the designated nonprofit organization would obtain or own the TABC permit, not AISD. This bill is supported by the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce. With this bill, the Chamber is better positioned to attract significant events such as the Country Music Awards to Arlington. May I finish? Thank you. The Center for Visual and Performing Arts is a beautiful, multifunctional public facility. Our community approved a 2014 bond to build the CVPA, and they would appreciate greater access and usage. Our community, our students, and our board are very proud of the CVPA. With the passage of House Bill 1825, the CVPA will serve more community organizations in Arlington and the Metroplex. Thank you for your thoughtful and favorable consideration of HB 1825. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Thanks for sticking around with us into the evening. Let's see if we have any questions for you. Any questions for the school board president? Thanks for serving. Thanks for being down here.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1825? Very well. We'll close public testimony. Bills left pending at this time.
At the same time, this is where guns and hooch mix. And that's why their property taxes are through the roof. Have you looked at they get that on the back so they make it all back. I am good for him. Don't make me hold the gavel. I've had enough gavel time today.
The chair lays out House Bill 1817 by Representative Capriglione and recognizes Senator Perry on behalf of the sponsor, Senator Hancock.
Currently, government entities are required to file a disclosure of interested parties, otherwise known as a Form 1295, with the Texas Ethics Commission for certain contracts. Last year, A development company sued the city of Hutto for a breach of contract. The judge found that the required form was not submitted and on file, therefore not complying with contract and transparency laws, and the judge found the contract void. With this ruling, the potential now exists that any government contract without a Form 1295 on file could be voided. HB 1817 updates the statute to allow for a cure period if the Form 1295 is not found to be on file. The government entity is required to send written notices to the business of their failure to provide the form. Then the business's entity has 10 days to submit the form.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm done. In a lot of ways.
Any questions for Senator Perry on behalf of the sponsor? Very good. We'll open public testimony on House Bill 1817, and the chair calls Ned Munoz. There he is. Mr. Munoz is the only witness we have at this point registered on for or against House Bill 1817. If anyone wishes to testify, please go to the kiosk outside the chamber and register there. Mr. Munoz, welcome back. You're a regular here, but introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you. Ned Munoz with the Texas Association of Builders here in support of the bill. I think Chairman Perry laid it out very well. This would address an unintended consequence from the legislature that came up with that appeals court case last year. So we are in support, and we thank the committee for hearing the bill.
I think you're right, Senator. Any questions for the witness? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1817? Very good. Public testimony is closed. Bill's left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 1217, 1217, by Representative Swanson, and recognizes Senator Betancourt on behalf of its sponsor, Senator Colhorst.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Simply put, what does House Bill 2017 does? It standardizes early voting across the state to at least 12 hours in all 254 counties. The bill also has a provision that allows counties to use funds dispersed from Secretary of State under Chapter 19 to help defray the cost of complying with the legislation. Key provisions amends Chapter 85 to eliminate the distinction between small and large counties, making the hours uniform, and amends Chapter 19 to allow for additional funding for counties providing the additional voting hours. The Chapter 19 funds are allocated from Secretary of State to counties as compensation for voter registration efforts. However, Chapter 19 funding is one of the few ways that the state can directly disperse to other counties, and I've known that since I was tax assessor because we used Chapter 19 funds back then. It's important to note the legislation does not set a standardized limit for early voting locations. As a result, rural counties can simply set a number of polling locations that work in their county. And simply ends the split system of early voting hours and creates a standardized process that all Texans have equal opportunity, to vote. Changes the committee substitute that are here in this layout is Chapter 19 funds for counties applies only to the counties that must extend voting hours, meaning counties with population under 55,000. Adds consecutive after 12 hours to ensure that a polling place is consistently open. With 254 counties administering elections, given clear guidance is important to ensure the voters have access to the ballot in a uniform manner. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Senator Perry, go ahead.
12 hours a day for early voting in some areas where basically got 3 people, 2 people. So what are you going to do with those situations? And I don't know how many of them are. I suspect there's quite a few rural counties that don't have the manpower to staff and do that for those times. So is there any wiggle room if they can't produce the workforce to do that because the workforce doesn't exist?
There are 13 counties that are under, this is in Senator Colcourt's SD 18, they're under 55 in population. And basically the bill authorizes payment for such an activity. And that's about all I can say without the author.
Yeah, so the goal would be you could get the paycheck high enough somebody might want to do it.
Well, clearly that would certainly be a positive outcome for the people that get the paycheck.
Yeah, I'm not thinking that was the intent of the bill. I mean, I had 38 counties in my last before redistricting under 10,000 and both of those under 5. And I know that a lot of them don't have early voting because of length. They may do 5 days or short duration, and it's because they don't have enough manpower to staff a 2-week early voting at 12 hours a day, multiple processes. So there's going to have to be a little work on that one on the floor. Or either I can be no. It's okay.
Well, then
all right.
Talk to Senator Colcourt.
All right.
I don't see anything about
work on it.
About your specific.
Grant says we'll work on it.
But there are certainly money to go hire them.
Senators, any other questions for Senator Bencourt on behalf of the sponsor? Very good. We'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Ed Johnson. We're on House Bill 1217. Mr. Johnson is the only witness we have registered. Mr. Johnson, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Ed Johnson, I'm here testifying for myself. I'm for HB 1217. And, I've spent a lot of time now in Lee County, Giddings, Texas, and was helping a state rep in a primary there, and it was a 5-county district, and found out that his opponent running against him was living in a county that gets to early vote from 7 to 7 and got to vote on the weekends. But the county that I was trying to help him in didn't get to vote early on the weekends and did not get to their early voting was only open from 8 to 4 every day. And, I was asking people, hurry, go early vote. And they said, well, we're just working during the day. We can't make it from 8 to 4, and it's not open on the weekends. So I started really looking into this and found out that, the extreme situation here, you have in some counties, a school district that's split between county lines. And inside that school district, you actually have a neighborhood that's split between county lines. So if you live on the west side of the neighborhood, you get to early vote on the weekends and you get to vote 7 to 7. But if you live on the east side of the subdivision in that same school district race, you don't get to early vote on the weekends and you don't get to vote from 7 to 7. So for the voters, this is really unjust. I mean, why just because I live in this county, I don't get to early vote doesn't make sense. It should be fair across the board. And this bill gave funding for these small counties to help hire that extra staff to make those extended hours. It doesn't require them to open more locations. It just gives them more money to hire the extra staff for the extended hours. And this would be great for the voters to make it where if you live in a rural county, you're not disenfranchised.
Thanks, Mr. Johnson. Senator Bettencourt.
Just a quick question. Mr. Johnson, what county are you living in now?
Well, I live in...
Well, I mean, what county are you, I know you have a ranch, but where's your ranch?
I live in Harris County.
Okay.
I have a ranch in Lee County and spend a lot of time there.
Right. Now, Lee County is one of the counties that's covered under Senator Colcourt's bill.
That is correct.
Okay, so because Lee County is bifurcated, literally there's one I mean, not bifurcated, but there's district races that go from county to county. So on which side had the greater hours? Which county was having the
Well, so Bastrop County is next door to Lee County.
Okay.
And it's above 55,000 in population.
So-
and it's open from 7 to 7 during early voting every day and open on the weekends.
So
Lee
your-
County, does not. It's only open 8 to 4 every day, and it's not open on the weekends for early voting.
Right now, if with your knowledge of Lee County, to Senator Perry's question, do you think people would be available to work the polls if Chapter 19 money was
Yes,
available?
the problem that I saw in Lee County, Burleson County, Milam County, these other counties that we're working in, it was more of a funding problem from the county. The county didn't have it in their budget for the extra extended hours for the staff. These small counties are really strapped for money right now after the pandemic and all the other things they have go through, so they don't have this in their budget.
So if
This bill would give them money to help provide for the extra hours for those workers. The workers are there, it's just they don't have the money to pay them.
So if you think Lee County had the money, they would actually
If Lee
employ them.
County had the money, they could do it.
Thank you for your testimony.
Any other questions, Senators? Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify? Oh, Senator Menendez?
Quick question. So,
A question for who?
The bill, and maybe I should save it for the author later time, but just to put it out there, we're going to add more money to small counties to say that so they can extend the hours, make them the same everywhere.
Right.
Question that I would, I just heard if they had the money, they could hire the folks. Do we have any sort of reporting requirement or metrics that gets reported back to us to say, hey, since you did this, this is what happened? Something so we know, because right now we're going to be putting this money out there, or does it have a timeline, or is this indefinitely, this is money?
Well, I think actually it's a good question. I think it clarifies that you've got the county, Chapter 19 under 55, and I don't see any reporting requirements because I assume that once the money is out there, there's a lot of reporting requirements inherent in Chapter 19. We had to fill out a substantial amount of forms to be able to document and count the money. We could ask the resource witness, but I'm pretty sure there's a pretty good paper trail.
It can wait till we
Okay.
talk about it on the floor.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, members? Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1217, 1217? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed, and the bill is left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 891 by Representative Spiller and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Betancourt, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 891 corrects recent interpretations of the Family Code by 2 Court of Appeals regarding expert testimony in family law cases and seeks to reduce unnecessary costs in custody cases. The Family Code allows expert testimony from a child custody evaluator if the evaluator meets certain professional qualifications and follows the procedures outlined in the statute and ordered by the court. The appellate courts decide the only way a party can impeach the testimony of a child custody evaluator is to perform a second complete child custody evaluation at the party's cost. These decisions are at odds with other areas of the law regarding how expert testimony can be discredited. House Bill 891 makes it clear that child custody evaluator's opinion may be impeached by another expert without conducting a second full evaluation by questioning the qualifications, methodology, and relevance of the information gathered by the evaluator. These bills came out of the House nearly unanimously, 131-1, but I do have an expert witness, Steve Breslin, available to answer any technical questions on the bill. All right.
Thanks, Senator. Any questions for the sponsor? Very good. The chair will open public testimony, and the chair calls Steve on House Bill 891, Steve Breslin. Again, House Bill 891. Steve is the only witness registered to testify at this point on House Bill 891. Anyone is free to register at the kiosk outside. Mr. Bresnan, go ahead. Welcome back.
I'm Steve Bresnan here on behalf of the Texas Family Law Foundation. This bill was developed by the foundation to reverse the two appellate court opinions that Senator Betancourt referred to. This basically would put these family law matters on the same standing as any other effort to impeach an expert witness. Senator Betancourt, thank you for picking up this bill and shepherding it here. And Mr. Chairman, very much appreciate y'all suspending the rules to take this bill up and all the courtesies you and your staff have extended to us. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Senators, any questions for Mr. Bresnan? Very good. Thanks for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 891? 891. Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 3506 by Representative Harris of Williamson, and I'm the sponsor of that one. The bill seeks to safeguard the privacy of victims of sexual assault by ensuring that their DNA is not permanently stored in a database and then shared with other entities. The bill requires state and local DNA databases to remove any record created from an elimination sample and other information derived from the record that is contained in the database 3 months after the date on which the forensic DNA analysis of the elimination sample is completed. And I do have a committee substitute, which I now lay out. After conferring with Representative Harris, I'm offering a substitute which comes as a recommendation. That is to say, it's from a recommendation of the Texas Department of Public Safety. Some local crime labs keep a separate database to identify possible contamination or other quality assurance events. The committee substitute requires these separate databases to also remove all DNA records created from an elimination sample, as well as any other information derived from that record within 3 months after the forensic DNA analysis is completed. The substitute further requires for agency rules to ensure that quality assurance databases are kept separate from the Federal Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, database housed by the FBI. And I'll yield for your questions. We do have a resource from DPS if anyone has questions for DPS. Very good. Thanks for being here. Thanks for service. We'll open public testimony on House Bill 3506. 3506. Anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3506? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. The bill is left pending at this time. The chair lays out House Bill 2800-2800 by Representative Paul and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Paxton, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Currently, the Secretary of State recommends that the county election board meetings should be held no later than the 36th day before a general election due to posting requirements, but they can be held as early as July. So there's quite a range that those can be held. In some counties, there are no county election board meetings, while in others, the meetings are held by phone or email. House Bill 2800 mandates that county election board meetings must be held in person and must be open to the public. The bill requires counties with a website to post a notice of the meeting 48 hours before each meeting. This bill passed out of the House unanimously, and it aims to increase transparency in the election process and simply let the public know about how their elections operate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for your consideration.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? We'll open public testimony, and the chair on open public testimony on House Bill 2800-2800, and the chair calls Ed Johnson. And senators, we also have a resource witness from the Secretary of State's office. I don't have any questions for the Secretary of State on this bill. Does anyone? Very well. Mr. Johnson, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Ed Johnson. I'm here testifying for myself, and I'm for House Bill 2800. I will tell you why I was serving in elections in Harris County. This board is supposed to meet to pick the chairman of the ballot board, central count, approve early voting hours and stuff like that. Every once in a while, members of this board would, and all those people I just named are appointed by the parties, your appropriate parties. The Republican Party and the Democrat Party submit a list, and the names are supposed to be picked from those lists. Every once in a while, we saw in Harris County where the board would get upset with the party and not pick from the list. They would pick their own. So this being behind closed doors and you can't see what's going on, you wouldn't find out until it was too late and the election had already started. So this brings just open light to it where you can see what this board is doing and make sure that they're following the election code rules and selecting the appropriate people.
Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for the witness? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2800? Very well. Seeing, hearing none, public testimony is closed. The bill is left pending at this time.
That'd be fine.
The chair lays out House Bill 3372 by Representative Timish and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Parker, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I appreciate the opportunity to lay out before you this evening HB 3372. When making a campaign donation using a credit card, a processing fee is often incurred. This can cause a great deal of confusion for candidates when reporting their campaign contribution, depending on how the processing fee is handled. Candidates don't always have access to attorneys who specialize in campaign finance and election law, especially at the local and municipal levels. And without specialized expertise, it can be very difficult for the layperson to understand the proper procedure for reporting campaign contributions made by credit card. Often the credit card company will simply deduct the processing fee from the campaign contribution. According to Ethics Advisory Opinion number 514, issued on October 30th, 2013 by the Texas Ethics Commission, a candidate should report the full amount that the donor intended to contribute as a political contribution and report the deducted processing fee as a political expenditure. For example, a donor makes a $40 contribution to a candidate, but the credit card company deducts a $2 processing fee. So even though the candidate only receives $38, the candidate would report the full $40 as a campaign contribution. In addition, they would report the $2 processing fee as a political expenditure. Although the TEC has issued an advisory opinion stating this ruling has never been formally codified into law, HB 3372 will help clarify the campaign finance reporting process for candidates by making this explicit in the election code. Furthermore, sometimes the credit card company will give the donor the option to defray the processing fee. For example, the donor would give $40 to the candidate and then donate an additional $2 to cover the processing fee so that the candidate receives the full $40. In order to report this properly, the candidate needs to report the $40 contribution as one donation and the $2 contribution as a separate in-kind donation. 3372 allows candidates to aggregate all such in-kind contributions into a single donation for the purposes of reporting, thereby simplifying the process greatly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for giving me the chance to lay out the bill here this evening.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Members, any questions for the sponsor? Very good. We'll open public testimony on House Bill 3372. 3372. No one has registered to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3372, so we'll ask anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3372. Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Bills left pending at this time. And for the benefit of the witnesses, we'll continue to move through the agenda, but while we have a number of members here, because so many hearings are still going on, we're going to vote on some of the bills we've heard tonight and some pending business to keep the process moving. And so the chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 246 by Representative Swanson, sponsored by Senator Betancourt. That's the bill that we heard earlier this evening about a pilot program for recording ballot counting activity. 246, Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 246 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Aye. Birdwell. Aye. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Aye. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 7 ayes and 3 nays, the bill will be reported favorably. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 315, Representative Cortez's bill, sponsored by Senator Zaffarini, regarding information on an application for a ballot to be voted by mail. House Bill 315. Senator Zaffarini moves that House Bill 315 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 10 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably. Senator Zaffarini moves that the bill be certified and recommended for the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 409 by Representative Collier, sponsored by Senator Zaffarini. This is the one about the Indigent Defense Commission. Senator Zaffarini moves that we adopt the committee substitute. Is there any objection to the adoption substitute? Very good. The substitute's adopted. Senator Zaffarini moves that House Bill 409 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, substitute House Bill 409 will be reported favorably. Senator Zaffarini moves the bill be recommended and certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 639 by Representative Lozano, sponsored by Senator LaMantia. This is about temporary license to conduct bingo. Senator LaMantia, on House Bill 639, Senator LaMantia moves that the bill be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably. Senator LaMantia moves that the bill be recommended for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it's so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 1217 by Representative Swanson, presented to us tonight by Senator Betancourt on behalf of the sponsor, Senator Colcorst. Senator Betancourt moves that we adopt the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption substitute? Hearing none, it is adopted. Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 1217 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry.
If you wanted to go there, yes, sir. Very good.
Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 1423, Representative Campos bill, sponsored by Senator Betancourt, regarding expiration of protective orders. Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 1423 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, LaMantia, Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably. Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 1423 be recommended and certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, is so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 1817. That's Representative Capriglione's bill, sponsored by Senator Hancock and presented to us tonight in our meeting previously. We're on House Bill 1817. Senator Perry moves that House Bill 1817 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, LaMantia, Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Yes. There being 11 ayes and no nays, House Bill 1817 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Perry, do you have a motion on that one for local? Senator Perry moves that House Bill 1817 be recommended and certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, is so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 1825. House Bill 1825 by Representative Turner of Tarrant, sponsored by Senator Birdwell. The bill about school facilities for activities. House Bill 1825. Senator Birdwell moves that House Bill 1825 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll? 1825. Go ahead.
Birdwell, LaMantia, Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 10 ayes and 1 nay, the bill will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 2291 by Representative Slauson, sponsored by Senator Birdwell, about retired judges and justices and self-protection. Senator Birdwell moves that House Bill 2291 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, LaMantia,
2291.
Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, House Bill 2291 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Local? Local on that one? Yeah, local. Senator Birdwell moves that House Bill 2291 be recommended and certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it's so ordered. The chair lays out House Bill 2800 as a matter of pending business. House Bill 2800, Representative Paul's bill, sponsored by Senator Paxton, regarding the meetings of the County Election Board. We're on House Bill 2800. Representative Paxton moves that House Bill 2800 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, LaMantia, Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Yes. There being 11 ayes and no nays, House Bill 2800 will be reported favorably. Senator Paxton moves that House Bill 2800 be recommended and certified for the local and uncontested calendars. Their objection? Hearing none, it's so ordered. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 3372, Representative Timish's bill, sponsored by Senator Parker, on reporting of political contributions. Senator Parker moves that House Bill 3372 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt, Birdwell, LaMantia, Menendez, Middleton, Parker, Perry, Schwartner, Zaffarini, Paxton, Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, House Bill 3372 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Parker, you want to you send that to local. Senator Parker moves that the bill be recommended and certified for local and untested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it's so ordered. Yes, ma'am. The chair lays that as a matter of pending business, House Bill 891, Representative Spiller's bill, sponsored by Senator Betancourt, that we heard earlier this evening. 891. Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 891 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. Being 11 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably to the full Senate. And members, if you're looking for this on your agenda, you may recall that we suspended the rules today to add two bills, non-controversial bills, this one and Senator Menendez bill. So that's why it wasn't in your original agenda. And that's, of course, the one about the custody evaluators in custody cases. Senator Betancourt moves that the bill be certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it's so ordered. And then the second bill that was added to our posting for this afternoon, the chair lays out House Bill 4333, as a matter of pending business. Representative Garcia's bill, sponsored by Senator Menendez. Senator Menendez moves that House Bill 4333 be reported favorably to the full Senate with recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. 11-0. There being 11 ayes and no nays, House Bill 4333 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Senator Menendez moves that House Bill 4333 be recommended and certified for placement on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Members will now move to three bills that were heard at our last hearing. We have not reached yet. Those are 17, 2138, and 3297. The chair lays that as a matter of pending business, House Bill 17. That's Representative Cook's bill, sponsored by Senator Huffman. 17, and there's a committee substitute that is already before us. Senator Betancourt moves that we adopt the committee substitute. Is there objection? Hearing none, it is so ordered. Substitute's now before us. Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 17, as substituted, be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 8 ayes and 3 nays, House Bill 17, as substituted, will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair lays out as a matter of pending business House Bill 2138. This is Representative Cassell's bill, sponsored by Senator Betancourt, about wildlife raffles. House Bill 2138, which we heard last time. Senator Betancourt moves that House Bill 2138 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 9 ayes and 2 nays. I think that's the only split we had tonight with those numbers so far. 9 ayes and 2 nays. House Bill 2138 will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair lays that as a matter of pending business, House Bill 3297. 3297 by Representative Harris of Anderson, sponsored by Senator Middleton. That's the bill having to do with those state annual inspections. 3297. Senator Middleton moves that House Bill 3297 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Harry.
To the author, are we going to work on an amendment regarding the warranty? We are going to look at that, try to make that work. All right. Aye.
Schwartner.
To that.
Zaffarini. Paxton.
By warranty, do you mean the recall?
Yes, so we're working on trying to direct DMV to go back and figure out how to make that happen through the registration. That's a pretty important component for a lot of reasons. So, and I think we can get there.
Hughes.
Aye. There being 8 ayes and 3 noes, the bill will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Members, there's one more bill that Senator Paxton will conduct the vote on, then we'll recognize Senator Schwartner to present another bill to us. So I'll pass the gavel, figuratively or literally. One more to vote on, Brian. Hey, Brian, one more to vote on.
Or is it already before us? Okay. All right. Members, Chair sends up House Bill 3506 by Representative Harris. Senate sponsor is Senator Hughes, relating to the removal of certain DNA samples from certain DNA databases. The committee sub is already before us, and there is no objection. We will adopt the committee substitute.
Which bill are we on?
All right, we're on 3506.
Got it.
So, Senator Hughes moves that the committee substitute for House Bill 3506 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. The clerk will call the roll.
Betancourt. Aye. Birdwell.
Aye.
LaMantia. Menendez.
Aye.
Middleton. Parker. Harry.
Aye.
Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
Local.
No. There being 11 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably to
Senator Menendez moves for local. So.
local. Senator Menendez moves local. All right. If there's no objection, so ordered.
We've done away with local consents.
Yeah, pretty much. It's tomorrow. They got to get this stuff out of here just tonight.
Take it by temperature, so we have a few more bills, have a few more witnesses. If anybody needs to slip out, just let us know, because we may try to vote as we go, or try to vote at the
Vote
end.
as we go.
What's that?
Let's go.
Vote as we go.
Very good.
Get on it, man.
Brian, I'm going to need your vote on this.
And I thank the witnesses and those involved for your indulgence while we vote. Returning to our posted agenda, the chair lays out House Bill 2837, Representative Schaefer's bill, sponsored by Senator Schwartner. Recognize its sponsor to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this is by Representative Schaefer, and it has been titled the Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act, and seeks to prevent surveillance of private transactions involving firearms and related accessories by prohibiting entities involved in the sale of these items from assigning them a unique merchant code. The bill is a proactive, preemptive measure to prevent any backdoor efforts by regulatory authorities to use financial institutions to track the purchase of firearms in the United States. Specifically, the bill prohibits the assignment of a merchant code specific to firearms or require a merchant to use one. The bill also requires a payment card issuer or payment card network to notify a cardholder in writing on every occasion a firearm code is assigned. And finally, the bill directs the Attorney General to investigate any violation of this bill, and if a violation is not cured, to bring in action and seek civil penalties. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Senator Schwartner. Members, any questions for the sponsor?
How many do we have?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Perry, go
So
ahead.
basically what I understand is, and you haven't heard much about it of late, but a year or two ago, they were looking at merchants that had a certain code, and they were coming after them and not accepting the credit card charges. They were denying credit applications and things.
We've seen this with various types of policies, ESG policies, as well as firearm manufacturers regarding loans and financial banking. This one has to do with a code that was manufactured or made by the International Organization for Standardization in September of 2002 that uniquely identifies firearms.
Firearm sales.
And so it is a mechanism, and in fact has been purported to advance the potential tracking of this relative to how the merchants do it now, which is a more global kind of sales or miscellaneous code.
Right. It's not necessarily tracking as much as tracking for what purpose, right?
Exactly, right. Right now, the typical use is sporting goods or miscellaneous is the merchant code that's typically used. And it'd be more specific, and as such, could be utilized as a targeting mechanism and has actually been advanced as that by some interested groups.
Yep.
Senator Menendez, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. So the concern is not something that's happening today, but the concern is that it's something that could happen. I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to be proactive with this legislation. You're concerned that gun dealers will be targeted by banking institutions?
By potentially banking institutions, regulatory agencies, governments that want to know and track individuals that have purchased various firearm purchases and ammunition or accessories, and so this is a way that they see as an avenue to pursue that tracking of our, and again, in my opinion, our constitutional Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms and have some privacy when we're doing private transactions.
So it doesn't keep current law, there's nothing in Texas that keeps lawful people from purchasing guns. The concern, I guess, with this bill is that y'all don't, or the author of the bill doesn't want people or banks to know who's buying how many guns. I mean, that's the question I'm trying to figure out.
Well, it's a departure from what is currently being done by banks and credit card merchants and credit card processors. This is a new merchant code that has been advanced, again, by the International Organization for Standardization, based in Switzerland, and they approved this new merchant code for firearm and ammunition merchants in September of 2022. And this would prohibit, again, the utilization of that merchant code when it comes to Texas law, and as such, continue to protect the privacy of and privacy and security of those individuals wishing to purchase firearms or firearm accessories.
Do these banks share this coding data with anybody, or because I'm trying to figure out the privacy, because I don't think banks are selling the data. My understanding is banks are very cautious against sharing this data, so I'm trying to understand.
Well, Visa has authored various letters to anti-gun members of Congress saying that they're kind of a neutral party or try to be a neutral party, but there have been advances that if you have a merchant code that uniquely identifies firearms or ammunition, that could be utilized for purposes that are more political versus an actual just transactional code that is currently or what merchant codes are.
I see. Thank you. Thank you for taking my questions.
Senator Perry?
Yeah, I think it kind of models the ESG model where those credit card issuers are going to refuse to issue a credit card link or whatever they do. I don't know what the technical term is, but start cutting off some of the credit to those. And what you'll end up doing is forcing a lot of cash transactions. So, it's kind of those kind of things.
There have been banks, Amalgamated Bank, that they intend to create a software algorithm that will use the MCC, the merchant code, to report suspicious activity and illegal gun sales to our authorities. The contours of what would be deemed as suspicious activity not been articulated. This type of activity. The high-profile backers of this new merchant code include Guns Down America, Senator Elizabeth Warren, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, New York Attorney General Letitia James, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and California Attorney General Rob Bonta. I think I probably messed up some of their names. But that would be the supporters of the new code, and I'm an opponent of the new code.
I understand, and look, I mean, everyone around this table is a law-abiding citizen. I mean, probably the great majority of our constituents are law-abiding citizens, but I don't see, I'm not sure if, I mean, it's interesting. We're deciding to pass a law that banks can't code purchases more accurately because we're concerned with the privacy of the people buying the guns and the ammunition. Whereas after something happens, then we all ask, well, how did they obtain the guns and the ammunition? I think it's not a bad thing to be proactive, but I understand the concerns. I just disagree. I think.
Thank you, Senator. There is concern on the part of gun owners and people that buy guns and ammunition and firearm accessories that this type of automatic reporting by financial institutions would lead to tracking and then surveillance and registration, and eventually their concern is confiscation and actual infringement upon their Second Amendment rights. And this would be step one. That is the concern.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, any other? Oh, Senator LaMantia, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question. Is this going to prevent investigation by different agencies or departments of law enforcement, especially, living on the border, gun sales being sold and used by maybe cartel members or people taking it across to Mexico and using it for illegal activities? Because sometimes they look at gun sales to be able to track those type of sales and transactions.
Right. This has to do with the merchant code, the new merchant code, and the prohibition of the assignment of a merchant code specific to firearms when there's a transaction of a firearm or a firearm accessory or ammunition. So it prohibits the use of that merchant code. Right now, that merchant code is not being utilized. The codes being utilized are the codes that are more generalized, sporting good code or miscellaneous code. So to specifically answer your question, I'm not 100% sure, but I do not think it changes the current methodologies in which investigations can be pursued regarding the current ways you can investigate gun purchases in Texas.
But they wouldn't be able to use this data to enhance those investigations, so to speak.
They would not. This is a prohibition of the utilization of this merchant code. Yes.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman. So if maybe we should pass a law that they couldn't share the data with anybody unless it was for an investigation, rather than keeping them from tracking them appropriately. But that's a thought. Because I think if you're going to make an investigation, you need to know accurately what exactly you're looking for. So if you say someone bought $2,000 worth of sporting goods, you can't determine whether those were a couple of AR-15s or thousands of rounds of ammunition, which might be a little bit of a flag. Now, that having been said, if the federal government passes a law to this effect, it would supersede the state law, would it not?
If a federal law is passed, yes, it does supersede the state law regarding this.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senators, is there any other questions for the sponsor? Very well, we'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Darren Lasorte, Wesley Verdell, Brian Bodine, Celeste Embry. So Darren Lasorte, Brian Bodine, Wesley Verdell, Celeste Embry. Welcome, everyone. We'll let you get situated, and it's our custom to go from right to left from your perspective. So, Ms. Embry, I think if you're ready, you're first up. When you get ready, introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
Sounds great. Thank you very much, Senator. My name is Celeste Embry. I represent the Texas Bankers Association, respectively here to testify in opposition to the bill tonight. The Second Amendment rights of bank owners and employees across the state of Texas are very, very important, as is the importance of customer financial privacy information. However, there are some operational issues with House Bill 2837 that I would like to flag for each of you. We do believe that a clarification of the firearm code is necessary as drafted in the bill that came over from the House. Firearms, any code assigned to a firearms retailer or ammunition seller could be deemed to be in violation of what you're trying to accomplish or what the senator is trying to accomplish in section 610.002. Secondly, banks don't assign merchant category codes. Those codes are assigned by payment card networks. And so we believe that the bill inappropriately puts the onus on banks to be the arbiter of what the bill is trying to accomplish, whereas it's the payment card network that assigns the firearm code or the merchant category code, the sporting goods code, general retailers code. Finally, we believe that the private right of action found in the last section of the bill includes payment card issuers and payment card networks. Again, the banks don't assign the merchant category codes. Those are assigned by the payment card networks. And so if there were to be a private cause of action, we believe it's more appropriate that that cause of action is against the payment card network that's assigning the card. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let each witness testify, then we'll have questions after the end of the panel. So thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Yes, sir. I am Brian Bodine, and I am speaking on behalf of myself, grassroots activist, and a platform member of the Republican Party of Texas's convention last year. To be brief, basically this would probably give the federal government a significant amount of data to cherry pick through. One way or another, I think various federal agencies would come across that data. And I'm speaking in favor of the bill. I think most Americans that use a credit card to purchase a firearm are by and large going to be law-abiding citizens. And that data is going to be kept on them and possibly cherry-picked through in the future to where the federal government would basically have a back door towards knowing where the firearms are, who purchased what. And this is going to be very concerning for a lot of folks in the country that are essentially law-abiding and probably just own a few guns. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Darren Lasort with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. We are the Firearm Industry Trade Association, and wanted to make clear that firearm merchants certainly don't want to be a part of this surveillance apparatus that would be established, certainly a de facto gun owner registry that would be established. So wanted to make that clear. One concern that I think the financial institution should have associated with this is that the CEO of Amalgamated Bank is generally responsible for this being instituted in the first place. And she did talk about all of these things that sound like they should be coming from conspiracy theorists, talking about tracking the minute details associated with firearm owner purchases. And she talked about what the government might be able to do with that information in order to stop problems, stop future acts of violence. What I'll tell, being very familiar with reckless lawsuits, they should be very wary of what they promise because they will be the next victims of the reckless lawsuits, junk lawsuits, agenda related to acts of violence. And so they should be very careful what they hope for here, the financial institutions. As just one matter of detail, one thing that we do very much support in the bill is the shall as it relates to the Attorney General investigating and enforcing this law. You all are the policymakers. Changing it to a may would sort of defer that policymaking authority to the Attorney General, and the enforcement and investigation component of this is very, very critical. So I appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. With Gun Owners of America, we have roughly a couple million members in the country, and a large part of them are here in Texas. We are in support of this bill. Through the bill analysis, there is a paragraph on here that I'll read real quick. The new merchant category code will allow banks, payment card networks, acquirers, and other entities involved in payment card processing to identify and separately track lawful payment card purchases at firearm retailers in the state, paving the way for unprecedented surveillance of Second Amendment activity and information shared between financial institutions and the government. So this bill actually wouldn't exist had the credit card companies not made the bold statement that they were going to start tracking our firearm purchases. The credit card companies don't like this right now. Ultimately, it falls on them for making that claim, and that's why this bill exists. We would ask y'all to please support our protection of our privacy, of our rights of buying firearms. Thank you.
Thank you. And Senators, any questions for any of the four witnesses on this panel? Senator Middleton, go ahead.
I did. Thank you for coming today. The bill doesn't apply unless you actually are coding and tracking, right? So, I mean, if our banks aren't doing it, then why are we concerned with that? And then there also is an important provision of notice on page 4 that a payment card issuer, payment network shall notify the payment card holder in writing on every occasion that a firearms code is assigned to an electronic payment transaction. I think that's really important. We've seen a little bit of this already where I guess that was about a year ago where there was a proposed rules change with the IRS to report all transactions over $600, right? I think that was the threshold.
Right.
If you're coding transactions for firearms purchases and ammunition or anything related to that, and then you're having to do that too, which fortunately we defeated that rule so far. I think the reality of what this bill is trying to fix is going to come real pretty quick.
Thank you, Senator. Respectfully, if the bank isn't assigning the code, then how are they to provide the written notification? And so our concern is that in that section of the bill, we have the responsibility to provide notification of something that we don't know that's happening. And then with the next section that relates to the Attorney General's ability, shall, not may, as we heard the testimony just now, the ability to begin a civil investigation into the matter. Again, the bank is being investigated on something that it is not responsible for providing. Furthermore, the banks will all have to develop a compliance regime to prove that they are not collecting this information, to prove the negative.
And the bill does provide an opportunity to cure. So there's a 30-day period if someone's making a complaint that you're collecting and coding this data, then you could demonstrate, no, that's not the case, or, okay, yes, we were following, essentially what our vendor is doing, I guess, but we have a way to remedy that and got 30 days to do that. So I think there is a remedy there for that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Senator Perry.
So it's important, I think, that we get this right, and I've got to get into the weeds a little bit, and it's really hard for the average person out there, because I've done this with the comptroller on some other bills. You say y'all don't issue the payment code, but is this a fair statement? Banks are vertically integrated with the credit card issuers a lot of times. In other words, Wells Fargo has a credit card. Visa has a credit card. Visa may be a payment processor for Wells Fargo. But I think what you're telling me is it would be the payment processor that is assigning the codes.
The payment card network assigns the codes.
Okay,
yes, sir.
but is it fair to say y'all are vertically integrated in with those cards? And meaning you may not be the card issuer, you may not be the card application recipient, but you are at some point, a lot of times. Aren't y'all one and the same on a lot of levels, or is that an unfair statement?
Senator, we have 390 members of the Texas Bankers Association. We represent banks of all sizes and charter types. And so it could be very true for some of our members and not as true for...
So I would argue, I would make the statement that the large ones, the big banks, the national banks, are probably fairly vertically integrated in the payment processing and have access and do know what merchant codes are being signed. So the generic statement that we don't do it is not accurate. Is that a fair statement?
My large members would not agree with that statement. No, sir.
Well, you just said out of 390 members, it's probably highly likely or probable that they are vertically integrated in the payment processing.
There are some members who are more vertically integrated than others.
So therein lies the devil in the details, right? So it does apply, but it may not apply to all, because most little banks, community banks, don't have their own payment processing network where they would have an integration. So it's a dilemma. I think the threat is real. I don't have an easy solution, but when you're a hybrid like that, and what we're really talking about here is that national mantra that is seeking to do other things with data and not the little communities. So out of your 390, it'd be really interesting to know how many are vertically integrated in the payment processing system.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess a good example of credit card that's not affiliated with any particular member bank of yours would be American Express. Yes. They're independent credit card, right? I think I can try and think of Discover, possibly others. And so what you're saying is the majority of your banks, member banks, don't feel they would be responsible for the creation of this code. So there's a problem for you being held responsible for something you can't control throughout the process.
That's my testimony, yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a concern that if the Attorney General starts to investigate a particular bank over this privacy, if this bill goes into law, could it at any way compromise privacy of other customers of the bank? Is there a concern?
I haven't thought about that particular. I am not aware of that concern, no, sir. Okay. It may exist. I'm just not aware of it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
So, again, real quick.
Senator Perry, go ahead.
So are you familiar with the term acquiring bank in the food chain of the card cycle? What?
Yes, sir.
So, and they are the ones that issue the merchant code, correct?
I'll have to confirm.
I believe the FDIC website identifies the acquiring banks are the ones that issue the merchant category codes.
Okay.
And does that fit my vertical market conversation?
I'll have to look.
Thank you,
sir.
Senator Schwartz.
Mr. Chairman, you can't really conflate that. The FDIC website clearly states that the acquiring bank are the ones who issue the merchant category code, and this bill simply asks banks to maintain current business practices, in which they do not currently collect a firearms merchant code. This bill seeks to essentially prevent a backdoor registration of firearms by deputizing private companies to collect this code, which can be utilized to target and then systematically surveil and eventually potentially confiscate firearms from law-abiding citizens by those that are under a political agenda.
Senators, any other questions for these witnesses? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The chair now calls C.J. Grisham, Tara Misha. And the last two witnesses we have registered to speak on for or against House Bill 2837. If anyone else wishes to, please register at the kiosk outside or with Ms. Babb at the table. Ms. Grisham, are you set to go? Very good. Go ahead. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. My name is C.J. Grisham. I'm the legal counsel for Texas Gun Rights and Open Carry Texas, here in support of House Bill 2837. Financial activism by banks is one of the largest emerging threats against the Second Amendment. Last session, Texas passed a law that requires banks underwriting our hot municipal bond market to certify that they don't exclude the firearms industry. Electronic payment conglomerates, including PayPal, Square, and Apple Pay, have also taken a noticeable stance and in recent years banned firearm sales and transactions through their systems. Over the past few years, financial institutions have been cast under even more scrutiny. Several not-for-profit organizations convened to publish a book called Is Your Bank Loaded? The report includes a scorecard for 15 biggest banks based on the accord between financing and firearms, their stance, and statements concerning gun control, sponsorship of pro-gun groups, and campaign donations. A month later, Bank of America said it would put a halt on lending money, quote, to gun manufacturers that make military-style weapons. The Berkshire Bank, which had formerly issued a line of credit to Sig Sauer, also announced in 2018 it would break off its lending liaisons with the manufacturer. In September of last year, the Globalist International Organization for Standardization, which was mentioned here earlier, based in Geneva, implemented a new merchant category code for U.S. gun retailers. Visa, American Express, and MasterCard initially indicated that they were implementing this new code, but in March of this year announced that they would supposedly pause, not end, a plan to implement the code. We cannot rely upon the industry to do the right thing. It is increasingly under pressure from the vocal minority of gun grabbers, funded by the communists George Soros and Michael Bloomberg. Gun grabbers are not winning in the legislatures and Congress. Don't let them win using our banks. It's up to Texas to join Florida and put an end to the financial tyranny and pass House Bill 2837. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. You got that, Drew. You got that. He's about to be. Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tara Mitcha, NRA, here in support of House Bill 2837. I think you've heard from the sponsor and previous witnesses about how we got to this point where the legislation became necessary. So I wanted to touch on a couple of the specifics about the language in this bill. The banks have argued that they neither establish merchant category codes nor assign merchant category codes, therefore they should be exempt from the notice and enforcement provisions in the bill. It's our understanding, and I think Senator Perry brought this up, that although merchant category codes are typically issued and managed by credit card brands, they can also be assigned by an acquiring bank to a business when a merchant account is created. If these banks can assign MCCs or require the use of certain MCCs by contract, then they should remain under the provisions of this bill. There's also been discussion about changing shall to may regarding actions by the Office of Attorney General in the enforcement sections of the bill. We testified against such a change over in the House committee, arguing that it should not be left up to aggrieved citizens to police the use of firearm-specific merchant category codes by banks or credit card companies. The state should enforce this law in this policy area to protect consumer privacy. If there's anything law-abiding gun owners support and value as much as their right to keep and bear arms, it's their right to privacy. We urge the committee to pass this bill with its current protections in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for either of our last two witnesses? Thank you both for being here. Thanks for your testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2837? Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. Senator Schwartner moves that House Bill 2837 be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. 2837. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Birdwell. LaMantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 8 ayes and 3 nays, House Bill that we just heard, 2837, will be reported favorably to the full Senate. The chair now lays out House Bill 1181 by Representative Shaheen and recognizes its sponsor, Senator Paxton, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. We have approached this subject before, and I've appreciated your unanimous support out of this committee. We all agree that protecting children from harm is a primary duty of a parent. Yet in this day and age, the devices that they use contain readily available hardcore pornographic content and videos and pictures that harm the minds of children. Texas law prohibits exposing a minor to pornography in the penal code relating to the sale, distribution, or display of harmful material to a minor. According to the National Center on Child Exploitation, pornography is proven to be biologically addictive, and research shows that adolescents are more susceptible than adults to addictions and their developmental effects on the brain. Exposure to explicit content in childhood is linked to increases in the demand for child pornography, child exploitation, human trafficking, and prostitution. Children who use pornography are more prone to engage in risky sexual behaviors and are at risk of sexual victimization, which is associated with mental health disorders. Members, it is developmentally harmful for children to view content from mainstream pornography websites that shows sexual violence, incest, physical aggression, sexual assault, non-consent, and teens engaged in these activities. House Bill 1181 protects our children from pornographic material on the internet using age verification for explicit content. Members, we already passed age verification unanimously from this committee and from the floor. And House Bill 1181, this bill, passed out of the Texas House unanimously. I do have a committee sub.
The chair lays out the committee substitute and recognizes its sponsor to explain the substitute.
Members, the committee sub incorporates the device filter language, which we have already passed from this committee, again, unanimously, as Senate Bill 417 and passed on the local calendar. Representative Shaheen and I worked together to incorporate stakeholder input that adds the Miller versus California test to provide a good degree of specificity so that organizations have adequate notice as to what is allowed and what is not. It creates a more specific definition of filter, including a good faith clause. It removes the private right of action, and it makes instead the enforcement mechanism the Attorney General. Members, you will remember from the layout of Senate Bill 417 that virtually all devices have filters to filter out pornographic content, but they are preset to off when the device is activated. This bill requires manufacturers, you will remember, to preset the filter on the device to on. This decision to use device filtering will remain the choice of a parent or guardian, but this change simply puts the onus on manufacturers to activate the filter. That's all that it requires them to do, activate the filter that already exists so that we protect more minors from this explicit material on the internet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members, for your consideration on this language that we've already considered once and supported, and I ask that you do so again.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any questions for the sponsor? Very well, we'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Jamie Carruthers, Deborah Berry, Joseph Scaramucci, and Servando Esparza. And I note that Ms. Berry is the invited testimony. I should have noted that, so we're going to let her go first, and then we'll move on. So welcome, introduce yourself, and give us your testimony.
Okay. Me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. I am Deborah Berry. I'm in favor of Bill 1181. If you had told me back in 2016 that I would be fighting the fight of my daughter, on the internet, sexual predators, I would have told you no way, not me. But it was me, and it was my daughter. A routine check of her social media led me to look at her photo library. And in that photo library, I found screenshots of things that were not intended for my parental eyes. There was dialogue between my daughter and strangers using highly sexualized language that was so foul, I didn't even know my daughter knew those words. She was 12 years old and she was in the 6th grade. I would find out later that this had actually begun when she was 10 years old. My world came crashing in at that moment. Those screenshots indicated it was only the tip of the iceberg. A deep dive on her laptop showed me countless visits to porn sites. This child is 10 years old. Pornhub, to be specific. Dating sites, videos, pictures. To be clear, this was not just material she was viewing. This was material that she was taking pictures of herself. She was being groomed. At age 15, the biggest dream my daughter could dream for herself was to go to LA and work in the adult film industry. Thank God she didn't. You want to know what internet pornography does to a child? I'll tell you. It is nothing short of a thief, the lowest of the low, preying on the vulnerabilities of a young, naive child and those who love her. That's the crime. Robbing my child of her innocence because she can never unsee what she has seen. Robbing my child of her security because she can never take back the pictures or videos she posted and be guaranteed that they won't resurface. Robbing me as her parent of precious time with her because she was unreachable and I had to send her away to keep her safe. Robbing me of the opportunity to teach her about love, sex, and the morals that I believed were a critical part of a healthy, happy, productive life. Access to internet pornography tainted her mind and forever changed the innocent child that she was meant to be. This is what I now know. My daughter has been digitally sex trafficked. It does not matter how many protections I built around her. It doesn't matter what neighborhood my family lived in. It didn't matter that they attended private schools. What matters is that children have technology in their hands and there are a few protections to keep them safe. They are living in a virtual Wild West. The curiosity of a child is not wrong. It's natural. What is wrong is when tech companies knowingly allow children to access things that harm them and then do nothing about it. We have an entire generation of young kids who are accessing porn to the point they don't even think it's an issue, much less a problem. I don't say this lightly. Our children are on a runaway tech train headed to some very dark places. I know what it means to be a mom, to have a child on that train, to be overwhelmed, exhausted, outflanked by the technology that grips her. I know what it means to be a parent desperate for answers and looking for solutions. I know what it means to have dreams shatter for your child and your heart broken because you can't even recognize the place in which you find yourself and your family and you have no idea what to do. From the bottom of my heart, I would never wish a moment on any parent like this. I am here today because not only do our children deserve our protection as adults, they deserve a childhood. They deserve a childhood. So let me ask you, why would anybody participate in helping predators steal the soul of a child? To do nothing would be complicit, and that is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And if you'll hold tight, we're going to have questions for you, I think, a little bit later. Mr. Esparza, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Chairman Hughes, Vice Chair Paxton, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Servando Esparza, and I'm Executive Director for TechNet in the Southeast region. Today I'm testifying in opposition to House Bill 1181, specifically Section 1 of the committee's substitute. Section 1 is the language from Senate Bill 417 on device filters, which I testified against earlier this session, and that was mentioned earlier that was the addition in the bill. Section 1 of the bill requires a device manufacturer to enable a filter that prevents the device from accessing, downloading, or displaying explicit material. TechNet reads the definition of filter, which was modified from the Senate Bill 417, to include the applicability for text messages. And the difficulty in that is that a device manufacturer, it is impossible, I should say, for a device manufacturer to apply a filter to text messages, as many of those text messages are end-to-end encryption, and so a device can't sort of see those messages. So that is an issue that we see in the bill. Additionally, the legislation would place the device manufacturers, which, as the name states, they produce solely the devices and not the content that is the harmful content that was explained and very tragic that those instances happen. But these are sort of device manufacturers that have no creating of the content. But in this bill, they have to be in the middle of, they have to be put in the place of deciding what has to be as part of the filter or not. So essentially what is blocked and what's not. The issue with this is with a lot of the filters that you'll see some filters just overblock entire websites and entire pages just for the sake of something potentially being harmful, and then a potential company could accuse the device manufacturer for over blocking or censoring their web page or website. There is a good faith effort, and I will have to say that Senator Paxton did add some changes to the bill that, based on our testimony before, but because the definition of filter includes that situation where I mentioned about the text messages, we want to make sure that that if that is included in there, that if a filter doesn't do that, then you can't take part in the good faith effort there. I see I'm out of time, so I'll just close there and be open for questions.
Senator Paxton, you're recognized.
Yes. So can you think of any reason why, as a manufacturer, you wouldn't do everything possible to protect a child from inadvertent exposure to pornography?
Senator, I would respond that the other sections of the bill take the approach of putting the blocking, the access to it at the site of that harmful content. So I think it's section 2 of the bill requires that those websites that have harmful content, majority of it, put age verification processes in place. We think that that's a better approach to block that part of the harmful sites from viewership or that access.
Was that a yes or a no?
I'm sorry?
So was that a yes or a no?
I would say that the alternative, then section 2 is the better approach.
So my point is we should be doing everything possible. And there will be some language to match up. This language, there were some drafting errors. We're going to match it up with 417, which is what we passed out of here unanimously. I believe you still opposed it, even with that. I don't understand why, but we'll be taking care of the thing that you've brought up on the filter. And then just very quickly, Deborah, thank you for your courage and taking an unspeakable tragedy in your family and being strong and brave enough to utilize it to help other families. Thank you.
Senator Perry.
Well, I think Senator Paxton hit the nail on the head. I don't know what universe in your response that Section 2 is a better approach. It's not human to answer it that way. So if I understood you right, there is a way to block. Your concern is that the block includes a text, which you're saying technology-wise you can't read that. But I also heard you say in a statement about over-blocking and having people upset. So what I understand through the interpretation of that was you're not for filtering or blocking anything on that device. Is that a fair statement?
No, sir.
Well, what you said was, we can't do it because technology doesn't allow texting, and you followed up in your conversation with, we might be encountering problems with, quote, over-blocking a website. I don't know how you over-block a pornographic website from a minor.
Yeah, if I may sort of explain the portions of it. So the overblocking typically happens with websites. I was explaining with a website or web page. Essentially, anything that would potentially have third-party content, people can add comments. Some of the device filters or just any filter that you can secure, that they would just block entire websites. That is different than like prohibiting an app from being downloaded because of potential harmful content being on that place. The third part, what I mentioned about the text messages, there's this idea of a filter.
So let me ask, I don't want to know about the technology because you've said text don't work. Are you fundamentally opposed against blocking websites or pornographic material to a minor because of it's, quote, over-blocking?
No, sir.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
All right. Well, let me tell you, recently in my district, 6-year-old, not sure if it was on a school-issued iPad or not, got onto a pornographic website and did some bad things to another 6-year-old classmate. Pornographic is more addictive than heroin, any drug. It's imprintable. It stays there. It doesn't come off. Once you see it, you can't get rid of it. You come in here every session and talk about things about why it's not a good idea. I don't honestly know how you work in an environment like that. And I really don't understand how you wouldn't be saying whatever's necessary, device, at the site, origination, or anywhere in between, it should be 100% out of reach for anybody that's under 18. And so it's sad that your excuses are about this or that. Truth of the matter is, I don't know how you come in here every session and do this because it's repetitive.
Senator Bettencourt.
All right. Now, I don't care whether it's encrypted technology by text. I don't care whether it's blocking the website. It is a moral responsibility for your company and everybody else to start doing this now. We've got more problems than just Deborah's daughter. It is pervasive in society. We are going to lose a generation of children to pornography if big tech doesn't get off their ass and start working to help these families and keep these kids from being addicted for the rest of their life. Do you understand that? I want a yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Say it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you have to do it because there's nobody else that can do it. I understand the encryption problems. I understand the blocking problems. It is absolutely essential that big tech get this into their head. What liver's left of humanity that's not an AI has to understand that if we imprison, and that's what we're talking about here, imprison preteens into some type of pornographic revolving display, they'll never get out of it in the rest of their life. So I don't want any equivocation here. I am sick of it, and I've had enough of watching this from session to session. Now, I'm voting for this bill, and it's time for big tech to get off their ass and help humanity before it's too late. Because that's what we're talking about. It's nearly, I pray that Deborah's daughter can recover. But you have got to understand this is happening to millions. And she found out about it.
That's right.
It's happening to millions of kids. So I don't care if we have to have encrypted technology on text. I don't care if we're overblocking websites. I don't care at all. Because we've got to protect under 18, and preteens have to be completely secured from this. Because they can't handle the information. It causes a lifetime of addiction. Yes. And I don't need any other studies. I've seen it. So when you come into this body, I expect you to come in with a solution. No more equivocation. I don't want to hear about encrypted technology. You've got some very bright people that are working for you. But it's time for you to support these bills by Senator Paxton. And quite frankly, this is one senator I've had enough. I do not want to lose a generation of young Americans to this type of addiction because I can't get them back. That's right. She's telling you she could barely get her daughter back. If she can still get her back, God bless her. And there's millions of them. And that is your responsibility as an industry representative.
Senator Zaffarini.
Thank you. First to the mother, thank you for your strength of character and being with us today. And would you mind telling us your daughter's situation today? Has she made some progress?
She's coming along. It never leaves you, that's the thing. You can never undo what happened. I don't know. She's only 19 now. We'll see what happens when she reaches her adult relationships.
Well, thank you. Mr. Esparza, what surprises me is your opposition to the bill instead of perhaps recommending some amendments. Is there no way that you could look at this bill and understand and support its purpose, and yet perhaps recommend some amendments that would be acceptable to those of us who support it?
Yes, ma'am. I will take it back to the association and provide some language. We met with Senator Paxton's office this morning and provided some early feedback, but we'll provide some additional language.
I certainly think that would be positive and more responsible and a very positive way to do it, to try to solve the problem, not be part of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jamie Carruthers. I'm the Vice President of Policy at Street Grace, and I'm here in support, representing them in support of House Bill 1181. Briefly, if we go back to 1973, the Supreme Court came out with the Miller decision, which redefined the standard for determining obscene material. And if we go back to 1973 and look at that, our Texas legislature, showing great foresight, realized that we could be facing an avalanche of pornography, and we should be protecting kids from this, and they turned around and they enacted 4323 in our penal code and said, you can't sell it to kids, you can't show pornography to kids, you can't give pornography to kids. All of that is a crime. And they were right? The production and consumption of pornography steadily increased. It exploded with the advent of video cassette. And so it was remarkable what we did then. But we saw that crisis so clearly, but that pales in comparison to reality today. And the reality today is all kids in Texas have pretty much instantaneous access to materials that are so vile and so degenerate, they didn't even exist as pornography until the internet. And what's really amazing about all this is our understanding of the negative effects of pornography are far greater than they were in 1973. We know now that it rewires the brain, that it causes addiction, that it causes lasting mental problems, that it causes isolation and loneliness and suicidal thoughts, and that it's a tool used by predators to groom kids, to sexualize kids, and to control kids. And two attempts have been made at the federal level, the Communications Decency Act and the Online Protection Act. The Supreme Court struck them both down. And when they did, and I'm paraphrasing here, they said, stop trying to control what creators create and providers provide, and put your safeguards on the end user and on the device itself. And that's what 1181 does. And I am so grateful that we have this, and I have the opportunity to testify on it, because at Street Grace, where a lot of our work is case management of minor traffic victims, trying to undo the damage done by trafficking and exploitation, where porn is a toxic thread that is run through all of these children's histories, or is used as the on-ramp and the gate to get them in. There simply isn't, I've never said this before about any bill before, there isn't a more important bill this session from our perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Senator Paxton.
When you talk about the addictive nature of pornography, in your experience, if you were to compare the addictive nature of drugs to the addictive nature of pornography, have you seen, how would you compare those?
Yeah, they're very similar, right? They both provide near instantaneous gratification. They both provide a fantasy world and an escape, right? And for pornography users, that need to escape and isolate grows greater and greater. And in fact, a lot of heavy pornography users will say, even when they're engaging with their family or their friends or their work, their mind is still on porn. And for children whose brains are still developing, this is exponentially multiplied, and it can permanently damage their ability to form long-term relationships. It fundamentally alters human-to-human interaction.
Thank you. Members, several of you are on Senate Finance, and you may remember the Office of Civil Commitment, the testimony from their executive director. And she talked about, we talked to several different branches of our prison system about some of the issues that they dealt with and contraband and that sort of thing. Generally, when they talked about contraband in the prison system in general, they were talking about drugs. But in the civil commitment system, her testimony was they really don't have trouble with drugs. What they have trouble with, these inmates aren't trying to get drugs. They want pornography, which I think just goes to how powerful the addiction is. They prefer that over drugs, which is what they're trying to protect everyone else from coming into the system. So thank you. It's incredibly dangerous. And again, I appreciate the support of the committee in the past, and I would deeply appreciate your support again as we do everything we can. We can't protect kids from everything, but we do everything we can do to protect minors from this incredibly dangerous material. Thank you.
Senator Middleton.
Thank you, Chair. Could you maybe walk us through who are the members of your association?
So we have about 100 members. I'm sorry. We have about 100 members listed on our website, all the way from device manufacturers to internet service providers to transportation network companies, telehealth. It just kind of runs a pretty broad spectrum of technology companies.
And they pay dues to this association. How are they members?
Yes, everybody pays dues.
They pay dues. Okay. Who's the largest dues-paying member?
That I do not know. I don't do membership.
Could you get us that?
I could see how we could provide that.
That would be great to see who's paying for this position.
Sir.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions for the witnesses? Thank you each for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The chair calls Joseph Scaramucci, Teresa Thomas, Sandra Kirby, Joseph Proenza. We're looking for Joseph Scaramucci, Teresa Thomas, Sandra Kirby, Joseph Proenza. And those are the last four witnesses we have registered to testify on for or against House Bill 1181. If anyone else wishes to testify, please register at the kiosk outside the chamber or check in with Ms. Babb at the table, who will help you with a paper registration. Again, we're looking for Joseph Scaramucci, Teresa Thomas, Sandra Kirby, Joseph Proenza. Very good. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Joe Proenza. I'm with the American Principles Project in Virginia. We are a conservative, pro-family organization. We're really happy today to speak in favor of HB 1181. I'm not going to give you, again, a kind of a summary of the bill because I think the last witnesses did a tremendous job doing that, but I do want to point out some of the specific points that we think are very important. While we would have preferred the private right of action, we're very excited to hear that the Attorney General will be able to hold these companies accountable for allowing minors access to this pornographic material. And there are a lot of industries that deal with online age verification and are able to do so in a very effective way. I live in Washington, D.C. You can sports bet in Washington, D.C. Age verification is extremely easy to sports bet in Washington, D.C. It is not cumbersome to execute and to get on there. And I promise I've lost a couple sports bets doing that, so I don't recommend that, but it's very easy to execute that. In my estimation, this is more important than protecting kids from access to sports gambling, more important than access to alcohol, more important than access to tobacco. And that's because these devices that they're able to access this are everywhere. I came in and checked in this morning to the Capitol, watched a group of kids come in. Every single kid, probably middle schoolers, had a cell phone, had AirPods. Now, I didn't have that when I was a kid, but every single kid pretty much in America has access to that, and it's a very simple way for them to get it, and we need to make sure that we're able to prevent that from occurring. One of the things that's different about the pornography in the 21st century than it was with Playboy or Hustler magazine is the weirdness and the disgusting nature of what we're seeing. The number 2 search for porn in the United States is hentai, which is a Japanese word for strange appearance. And that's pretty much what you get. It is the most psychologically disturbing and degrading pornography you can find on the internet. And it is essentially a cartoon that I think is not unreasonable to say is more or less marketed to children, which then starts this process of addiction and spins it off into worse and worse consequences. Again, we think this is a common sense bill. We think this is a bipartisan bill, and we're very much looking forward to the adoption of this bill. Texas will not be alone in passing bills like this. Just last week, Governor Youngkin in Virginia signed a bill. We also have Louisiana, Utah, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Again, Mr. Chairman and the committee, thank you very much for having us here to testify in favor of the passage of HB 1181.
Thanks for your testimony.
Oh, there's another one. I couldn't see her. Oh, wait. I couldn't see her.
Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Hello, my name is Sandra Kirby. I am also with the American Principles Project, like my colleague
Get
here.
a little closer to the microphone so we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Sandra Kirby. I am also with the American Principles Project, like my colleague Joe here. Another thing, in addition to what he spoke about, I wanted to highlight the fact that numerous studies have linked porn use, especially at early ages, with mental health issues, difficulties in establishing and maintaining meaningful relationships, and even sexually abusive behavior. Meanwhile, according to one study, and also multiples, the age varies. The average age children are exposed to online pornography is only 12 years old these days. It's getting younger and younger every single year. I think the need for this legislation is obvious. People keep bringing up the rights of these companies to have freedom of putting whatever content they want on there and this undue burden. What about the children's right not to know, to preserve their innocence, and to preserve their childhood? As a family-based organization, we consider that of the utmost importance to allow them to have these wholesome lives that will allow them to flourish later instead of being trapped in this very lonely, depressing addiction. As many have mentioned, it is worse than most drugs, and it's only going to harm them further in life and prevent them from actually connecting with others. They won't be able to connect with any of their friends, with any other citizens, and to come together as wholesome, full people. Thank you so much for your work on this. We're very much in favor.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Zaffarani.
Thank you. Your testimony, both of you, reminds me of what we uncovered when we dealt with the tobacco industry. and their deliberate attempt to addict children to tobacco. It was horrific, the steps that they took. And this is just as bad, if not worse. But my question to you is the marketing to boys or to girls or to both?
I think the marketing is to both. It appeals in different ways to boys in their sexuality and their masculinity in a very perverted way, and to women in their beauty and how they should be wanted and desired, but in a very inappropriate sense. Like previous witness mentioned, young girls want that attention. They want to be validated, and they want to be told they're beautiful. And someone who's older and understands how sex works and what they want from a child in a very inappropriate way, they can take advantage of that. And children simply don't know. They are curious, and they want to be validated by adults, by their parents, by those they see as their parents' peers. And young men want to be validated by those that they see as men, or as older women who will validate them as quote-unquote men, even though the disparity is evident to anyone who's mature, but not to a child who is not fully developed.
And Senator, to your point about the tobacco companies, that's what I think hentai and these other kinds of cartoon pornography are doing, is they're attempting to create a lifelong customer the same way the tobacco industry attempted to create lifelong customers decades before.
And do you have any additional data or information about whether the marketing is to boys and or to girls?
With the hentai porn specifically, I would say that it follows a similar pattern Sandra mentioned earlier.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Paxton.
Thank you. You've, of course, spoken about the addictive nature. And, you know, sometimes people think about something like this, that it's just people's preferences and opinions about things. But your testimony is that this is addictive material. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Senator Zaffarini, that's a great analogy to the tobacco industry and the marketing to get kids addicted. So I appreciate the information you've brought and your testimony. Thank you. And I wanted to add a little something I'd mentioned with the previous panel. I talked about the Office of Civil Commitment, and it occurred to me that we know what that is, but the folks in the chamber probably don't know what that is. These are folks that are sex offenders. And so these are the folks that when the contraband they're trying to keep out of that unit isn't drugs, it's pornography. So that just goes to how addictive this is. And these folks have, throughout their lives, acclimated, and that addiction has just deepened and deepened and deepened. Thank you.
Senator Perry.
Yeah, thank you. So we had tobacco, we have vape. We ignored those conversations at the end of Health and Human Services that they weren't marketing kids in their Kool-Aid package, and now we have a vape epidemic. Here's what I need from you. One of my other jobs is POPs. I have a 16-year-old granddaughter. I have 4 under 4.5. And you mentioned some of the cartoon. I can't keep up with what's on cartoons, and I don't know what the world was. Could you get the committee, if nobody wants it, I would love to have a list of those things that, as parents, my kids, of my grandkids, and as grandparents, where we would be more informed about checking devices of phones and things when that comes about. But I know they change, and I know there's different players, but I would really benefit from that, because it's something, because I work here sometimes for $600 a month. We're down here a little bit. This is testimony that's way too familiar, and it's sad. But I think just a general awareness is a good thing for parents like me, their grandparents that are in that role, because kids come across it with other kids. Kids come across it in whatever venue, and if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't know it for what it is. You know, there was, I think, something my 16-year-old was watching was Malmané or something weird, and you looked at it and you watched it, and it wasn't pornographic, but it was definitely not what I would consider appropriate. So we cut it off. It wasn't in your face, but you could just see the underlings and the undertones of where some of that stuff was going to go. So he shut it off, Almanac or something. I don't remember what it was, but anyway, it would benefit me if you could do that.
Senator, we'd be happy to provide you more information on that in a written form at a later time. I would also say that there's a lot of weird stuff on the internet that children may or may not get access to, whether it's on YouTube or otherwise. It's not necessarily pornographic, but that is suggestive in a way in an attempt to evade that measure. And I also think that the 1/3 threshold on qualifying for the age verification is I think an important part, and kind of gives providers the ability to make a determination there, but that might even be too low in that circumstance.
Senators, any other questions for these two witnesses? Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1181? Very well. Public testimony is closed. Senator Paxton has previously laid out the substitute. Senator Paxton moves that we adopt the committee's substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the substitute? Hearing none, the substitute is now adopted. Senator Paxton moves that House Bill 1181 as substituted be reported favorably to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt. Aye. Birdwell. Aye. Lamatia. Menendez.
Aye.
Middleton.
Aye.
Parker. Aye. Perry.
Aye.
Schwartner. Aye. Zaffarini. Paxton. Hughes.
Aye. There being 11 ayes and no nays, the bill will be reported favorably to the full Senate. Since there's going to be amendments on the floor and more discussion, we won't certify this one for local. We'll all we'll have an opportunity to vote for this on the floor of the Senate. Thank you, Senator Paxton. Senator Zaffarini.
Justice Senator Paxton that she has all the members of the committee co-sponsor.
Well, several of you already have, but get on the train. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it so much.
So when the committee report is prepared, that's when sponsorship is normally determined. Can we ask for unanimous consent to have every member of the committee listed as a co-sponsor of this bill? Very well. So ordered.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Zaffarini. The chair lays out House Bill 5180. Comes to us from Representative Wilson of Williamson, and I'm the sponsor. The bill clarifies that after the 60-day period following an election, during which ballots and ballot-related materials must be kept under lock and key, after that 60-day period, the public must be given access to those anonymous post-election materials. To preserve the chain of custody for election contests, recounts, and audits, current law mandates the ballots be kept secure for 60 days following an election. But there's an ambiguity as to what happens afterwards. Many of us will recall during testimony on Senate Bill 1 last session, when we learned from the Secretary of State's office that there was an argument that for 2 years the ballots were not accessible. It's a strange situation to be in. According to an AG opinion, which has been the standard for the last 35 years, ballots must be kept for 22 months and then discarded, but no provision for public access. This past November, the Office of Attorney General released an opinion, KP 0411, that ballots could be considered public information right away. This raised concern among election officials on whether they'd face criminal charges should they make the materials immediately available to the public. House Bill 5180 addresses this concern by clearly establishing that following the 60-day period after an election for which ballots must be secured and locked, the custodian of election records then must give the public access to the original voted ballots, cast vote records, and ballot images. The bill does not change the 60-day ballot security period, nor does it allow the records to be tampered with or removed, only examined and imaged under supervision. There's a committee substitute which will be distributed to you this time, and which we now lay out. After the bill passed the House, it was brought to our attention that the bill delayed the time frame for when the public could access two types of election material. The committee substitute resolves this discrepancy by making cast vote records and images of ballots, if a county maintains such images, available for public inspection the day after the final canvass of an election, while keeping the 61-day requirement for physical ballots. And that is what the substitute does, and I yield for your questions. We'll open public testimony on House Bill 5180. The chair calls Ed Johnson, Laura Presley, Marcia Strickler. Again, we're looking for Ed Johnson, Dr. Laura Presley, Marcia Strickler. Welcome, Dr. Presley.
Hello.
We know you, but introduce yourself. Give us your testimony. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Hughes and members. I'm Dr. Laura Presley, and I am on this bill. We have not seen the committee substitute, and I have handouts here of what we recommend as the substitute, which I think is going to be consistent. Someone, thank you. All right. This bill addresses timelines for public inspection of physical ballots and electronic ballot records. Plain and simple, the public wants sooner than later electronic ballot records because there's some concerns regarding the computerized vote count and the security of our ballots. The Texas Constitution, Article 6, Section 4, mandates that the legislature make provisions to detect fraud. You had that in Senate Bill 1 last session. Leaving this bill as is will make it harder to do that. As written, the bill makes electronic ballot records only available to the public 60 days after the election. Electronic ballot records include cast vote records, and think of cast vote records as an Excel spreadsheet. And another electronic record is the ballot image, and think of that as a PDF document or a JPEG or a bitmap. I've used both, I've done analysis on both, and I've done audits of both. It's very reasonable to allow access to these electronic records upon the completion of the canvass. It's very reasonable. These amendments were requested by several members in the House Election Committee. They were recommended by the Secretary of State. They were agreed upon by the House author, yet slipped through the cracks. Please add these amendments and enable the detection of ballot fraud and ensure transparency for our elections. And I'm here if you have questions. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Presley, and I can represent to you that everything you just said, it is in the substitute. So
bless
thank
you. Thank you. This is wonderful. Thank you.
No, thank you for your testimony and your work on these things. Mr. Johnson, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Ed Johnson. I'm here testifying for HB 5180. This is a great bill. It solves problems that have frustrated ballot security in Harris County. I'm going to tell you a quick story about Alan Bear and his wife. They worked on a case. It was a vote harvesting case. They had a voice recording of a lady that was selling votes. She had 300 ballots, and she was going down. It was with the Democrat primary. She was going down the ballot, going to the highest bidder in each race to sell them. They actually had a recording of this. So then Alan Bear went out with his committee and got copies of the applications and actually found in the area that she lived, in that precinct, 300 applications, all in very similar handwriting, but was really distinguishing, they all had the same stamp on the back of them, a gingerbread stamp. So there were 300 applications with gingerbread stamps in very similar handwriting. He tried to take this to the AG's office and the DA, and they said, well, we don't have time to do this whole investigation. If you give it to us all wrapped up and you can show where fraudulent votes were committed, we'll prosecute this case. So he put in open records, because these records are supposed to be kept for 22 months, and he couldn't get to them. So he had to wait 22 months before he actually got to the ballots. When he did, he actually found 300 ballots, and we have over 100 races in Harris County. They were all voted the same way. Same candidates on all 300 ballots in the same precinct, and very similar pin and marks on the ballots. So he had the proof. He takes it to the AG. It took him about a month to go through those. To find out, the AG said, well, you're out of time. The statute of limitations has run out on this case, and they couldn't prosecute it. These records are held for the 22 months for this purpose, to be able to find fraud, but you're not allowed to get to them. If I could say one quick thing, in your committee sub with the
bill's in great shape, so keep that in mind.
In the electronic records, I would make sure to add in that electronic part is delivered electronically, and sometimes to print out all that information would be very difficult.
Thank you. Ms. Strickler, introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Marcia Strickler, Williamson County. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I testified for this bill in Representative Reggie Smith's election committee a few weeks ago. And in Williamson County, we have been able to access the CVR records and the digital ballot images when requested until 2022, when our election administrator, through our county attorney, filed a lawsuit with the Texas Attorney General's office for a motion of summary judgment, as did Tarrant County and Harris County and one other county. What you have there in front of you is that lawsuit in Tarrant County. The Tarrant County summary judgment ruled in favor of the AG's opinion. There's also a copy there of the Attorney General's opinion, KP 0411. Williamson County suit was heard a month ago, but the judge has not made a ruling on that yet. I suspect they're waiting on the outcome of this legislative session on this bill. I support this bill. I support what I'm hearing of the amendments of this bill. It's very important for those of us who keep a keen eye on our elections to be allowed to access the CVR records and the electronic scan ballots of these records. So we appreciate you guys supporting this bill, and thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Members, any questions for any of our witnesses on this panel? Thank you each for being here.
Thank you.
The chair calls Mike Brewster, Terry Putnam. And those are the last two witnesses we have registered on for or against House Bill 5180. So if anyone else wishes to testify on for or against House Bill 5180, please make your way to the table and register with Ms. Babb so we can hear from you. And welcome. We'll start here on my left, your right. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
I'm Mike Brewster. I'm from Tarrant County, Texas, and I'm a man that is very involved in the election integrity issue, and I'm going to shock you because I'm going to come out against this bill as it is here. The reason is, and I asked for this to come out of the House, but I also lobbied very hard for some changes to it. One of them, it sounded like, my hearing's not too good, but it sounded like you addressed with your committee substitute. 60 days is too long. I'm going to give you an example. In the morning, I'm going to file a request in Tarrant County for documents on the heels of the positive court decision that we've got there, and it may help a candidate up there decide whether or not he's going to need to file a contest in that or not. If we had those electronic documents, it could help him decide if he needs to spend that money for a recount or for an election contest. If the 60-day provision was to go through as it was originally written, that wouldn't be possible. As you go on down in the bill, it discusses the if the images are there, there's a technical issue there. Every county in Texas cannot produce those images. This seems to give the counties that do permission not to keep them, and we can't. That to me seems like it's a violation of federal law. And then now we move on down to the last issue, and that's the redaction issue. This seems to be, and this is the way it's being interpreted in the counties, I guarantee you, the EAs are taking that as, before I can let the public look at those ballots, I have to go into the box and I have to look over the ballots to see if there's anything there. Well, that would be a complete violation of the chain of custody. There's never a time that the EA should be able to get a hold of those documents without the public being there. There should always be two entities involved. I'm going to finish up, if I may. It's also going to run you into juxtaposition with the 246 that you said that you wanted to send forward earlier, because you're talking about videotaping the ballots and ballot processing, so those ballots they're becoming public right off the bat there. But here you're saying before they can be public, somebody has got to go in and look at them. That chain of custody issue that's being raised there is enough to kill this bill, in my opinion. There has to be a clean chain of custody. If the public can see the ballots, the EA's got to bring them to the public. The public and the EA, or the custodian together, need to check the seals, need to check the records, need to make sure the chain of custody is good, and only then can you have a valid examination of the ballots.
Thanks for your testimony. When you can, take a look at that committee substitute once it's adopted, and you'll find much of what you've raised has been addressed, but we'll keep working on the bill. Thank you. Sir, introduce yourself. Give us your testimony. Welcome.
My name's Terry Putnam. I'm from Williamson County, and I am here to testify for this bill. As been reported earlier, and the chairman, you reported, there's been some confusion about what and when what information is publicly available. This bill ends that confusion. And secondly, this bill puts in the right location the ability to end that confusion, and that's with the legislature, not with the courts. So I applaud you for doing that. It does provide transparency. It allows citizens to independently assess the election for issues and anomalies. And so I'm for Bill 5180, and I hope that you will report it out to the full Senate. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions for either of our witnesses? Thank you both for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against? House Bill 5180. Seeing and hearing none, public testimony is closed. And the bill's left pending at this time. Members, we just closed public testimony on House Bill 5180 and left it pending. And so, to follow the procedure, we will now lay out as a matter of pending business House Bill 5180, the bill we just heard. That we are laying out as a matter of pending business House Bill 5180. I previously explained the committee substitute.
So the committee sub to House Bill 5180 is before us. And if there's no objection, we'll adopt the committee sub. Hearing none, so adopted. Thank you. Senator Hughes moves that House Bill 5180 be reported favorably. The committee sub to House Bill 5180 be reported favorably at full Senate with recommendation that it do pass and be printed. Will the clerk call the roll?
Betancourt.
Aye.
Birdwell.
Aye.
Lamantia. Menendez. Middleton. Parker. Perry. Schwartner. Zaffarini. Paxton.
Aye.
Hughes.
Aye.
There being 9 ayes and 0 nays, the bill will be reported favorably to local. Senator Hughes moves that the bill be submitted for inclusion on the local and uncontested calendar. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the bill will be submitted for local and uncontested.
Hey, can we do, what are those requests? Can we do, you're the DJ, can we request the bills? 1696 you got. It's yours.
33 or 45?
It's 1696, it says, Bill. That's a good bill. It helps people see.
Do you have the book on that? Thank you. The chair lays out at the request of Senator Menendez and the committee House Bill 1696. That's Representative Buckley's bill, House Bill 1696, which I'm honored to sponsor. House Bill 1696 hopes to ensure, if passed, will ensure that Texans will continue to have access to high-quality eye care and that independent optometry practices will continue to exist in our communities back home and across the state. Bill addresses some pretty big problems that optometrists are having with insurance companies. The eye care industry is being heavily consolidated and vertically integrated. Senator Perry has been decrying this trend in health care and in business and insurance for a long time, and that's affecting how optometrists deliver care to their patients. We've learned that vision plan companies that sell an insurance benefit plan also own the labs where glasses are made, frame companies that make the frames, and retail optical chain stores. In some cases, these vision plan companies are buying the optometrist office as well. It's one thing to buy up pieces of eye care industry, but quite another to use an insurance product to steer patients away from some doctors and towards other doctors for the gain of the insurance company. And there's evidence that is what's happening. Patients deserve transparency, especially in eye care and choice. We all know real competition drives down prices, and lack of competition does the opposite. House Bill 1696 deals with this. We put guardrails in place against anti-competitive and controlling behavior by vision plan companies. Ultimately, the beneficiary is the consumer, which in this case is a patient who has an important relationship with their eye doctor, and patients deserve to have that relationship protected. That's what the bill does, and I'll yield for your questions. Very good. Thank you, Senator. For invited testimony on House Bill 1696, we call Dr. Jennifer Deakins. And again, we know it's getting late. We thank everyone for being here and bearing with us, and as we move through these bills based on the numbers of witnesses. Doctor, welcome when you get situated there. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Hughes and committee members. My name is Dr. Jennifer Deakins. I'm representing myself and the Texas Optometric Association in support of the bill. I'm a practicing optometrist in Fort Worth, Texas. Most Americans have a vision plan, and companies that sell vision plans are starting to buy up all aspects of the eye care industry. They are now multi-billion-dollar, vertically integrated conglomerates. The three largest of these companies actually control about 85 to 90% of the vision plan market. The integration of these companies is reducing the amount of high-quality competition available to patients, and prices that consumers pay for eye care will go up once all the competitors in an area have been either forced into their integration scheme, their silo, or simply been put out of business. Typically, employers select a vision plan for their employees, and patients don't really have a choice in these plans. Eye doctors like myself want to be in network with these vision plans and help patients use their benefits. But patient care decisions should not be dictated by the vision plan, which was what they're trying to do. Basically, if a doctor is willing to play ball by selling the glasses that the vision plan owns and use their related services, the doctor is rewarded. If they're not willing to play ball, then they're punished. Doctors need to be free of this kind of influence so they can always do what's in the best interest of the patient. HB 1696 addresses the business and contracting tactics used by vision plans to self-deal, create monopolies, and stifle competition. The visual welfare of Texans is important, and this bill will make sure we continue to have access to high-quality eye care across the state. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized.
Thank you. So, did you say you're from Fort Worth?
Yes, Fort Worth, Texas.
And you came in just to testify for this?
I did.
And you've been waiting to testify since what time this morning?
I came right about when the Senate came in on the floor.
Okay, so well, thank you for doing this. So you represent the Optometrists Association?
Yes, sir.
And so the concern that you have is that sometimes, from what I heard from your testimony, if optometrists, certain plans will make it more difficult for you to be in their plan if you don't agree to play by their rules and steer your consumers in directions to purchase things from businesses they own. Is that correct?
Correct. The plans have begun to own sort of all aspects of the vision care industry. And so for their profits, there's pressures for the doctors to use those products, and that's not transparent to the patient and may not be in the best interest of the patient.
It's definitely not transparent, and it can probably not be in the best interest because it impedes your ability to be independent.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any other witnesses? Any other questions, I should say? Thank you. There are some other witnesses who will be testifying. And so if you want to, Doctor, if you don't mind, unless you need to get down the road, hold tight, because there's some other testimony that you may be,
Sure.
you may have some more questions for you. So
Yes, sir.
thank you. If you don't mind, thank you very much. We'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Dr. Valerie Sheedy Palan, Myra Hagblad, John Mazziotti. So we're looking for Dr. Valerie Sheedy Palan, Myra Hagblad, John Mazziotti. Again, thank you for staying up late with us. And we'll begin on my left, your right. Please introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Hi, my name is Myra Hagblad. I am a general manager for VisionWorks, a leading provider of eye care services in the U.S. We're based in San Antonio and a member of the VSP Vision family of companies. VSP Vision provides vision benefits to nearly 4.7 million people in the state of Texas. 2,262 businesses in Texas offer vision benefits to their employees. 3,369 independent eye doctors in Texas are part of the VSP Vision network of doctors. I am here today to share our opposition to HB 1696 as it is currently drafted. I live in Spicewood, Texas, and have worked in the eye care industry here in Texas for over 6 years. I am an ABO certified optician and general manager. I am the training manager for Austin and train all new general managers. It is my objective to ensure accessible and consistent eye care for all of our customers across all of our stores. I am very concerned by several provisions in the bill. In particular, this bill would prohibit vision plans from encouraging patients to access eye care through providers that enable them to maximize their benefits. This will lead to higher costs of care for patients and employers who provide benefits through vision care plans. It'll also prohibit vision care plans from developing innovative plan designs that reduce patient out-of-pocket costs by choosing high-quality, low-cost providers. Of great concern, with more than 2,500 employees statewide, VisionWorks will lose the ability to promote their locations to millions of VSP members in the state, resulting in store closures and laid-off employees. Overall passage of HB 1696 will negatively impact value to doctors, clients, consumers, and small businesses throughout the state of Texas, resulting in a negative patient experience, decreased patient flow, increased barriers to care, and bottom-line revenue loss. Thank you again for your time and the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Chairman Hughes and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address House Bill 1696. My name is John Mazziotti. I'm a regional vice president for Marchand Eyewear, a VSP Vision company. Marchand is one of the world's largest designers, manufacturers, and distributors of eyewear. VSP Vision provides vision benefits to 4,689,595 people in the state of Texas. 2,262 businesses in Texas offer vision benefits to their employees. 3,369 independent eye doctors in Texas are part of the VSP Vision network of doctors. I'm here today to voice opposition to HB 1696 as it is currently drafted. I live here in Austin and have worked in the eye care industry for over 20 years. I often spend time consulting with independent optometrists who care for patients with vision health needs. And the independent optometrists in our state tell me that they need a steady stream of patients walking through their doors and additional profits to survive as a small business. I am very concerned by several provisions in the bill. In particular, the bill would prohibit vision plans from encouraging patients to access care through providers that enable them to maximize their benefits. This inevitably will lead to higher cost of care for patients and the employers who provide benefits through vision care plans. The bill also would prohibit vision care plans from developing innovative plan designs that reduce patient out-of-pocket cost by choosing high-quality, low-cost providers. Passage of HB 1696 will negatively impact value to doctors, clients, consumers, and small businesses throughout the state of Texas. Thank you again for the time and opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. Good evening. Introduce yourself and go to your testimony.
Good evening. It's nice to be here. Chairman Hughes and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address HB 1696. My name is Dr. Valerie Sheedy-Pallone. I'm currently Vice President of Clinical Medical Affairs at BSP Vision, and I'm a licensed optometrist for 19 years. Today, BSP provides vision benefits for 4,689,595 people in the state of Texas. 2,262 businesses in Texas offer vision benefits to their employees, and 3,369 independent eye doctors in Texas are part of the VSP Vision Network of Doctors. I'm here today to add our voice in opposition to HB 1696 as it's currently drafted. In my days of practicing, I saw countless ways in which managed vision care plans greatly benefit my patients through lower cost, increased access, and improved clinical outcomes. Having witnessed this great value to my patients and members of the vision care plans, I'm very concerned by several provisions in the bill. In particular, this bill would prohibit vision plans from encouraging patients to access care through providers that enable them to maximize their benefits. This will lead to higher costs of care for patients and employers who have benefits through vision care plans. This particular bill would prohibit vision care plans from developing innovative plan designs that reduce out-of-pocket expenses for patients. As I see it, network doctors will see a decrease in patient flow, a reduction in overall revenue, negatively impacting their bottom line. Additionally, millions of Texas-based employees who rely on employer-sponsored vision plans will see a reduction in the value they receive from their vision benefits. This will likely drive up costs for patients and for their employers. Passage of HB 1696 will negatively impact value to doctors, patients, clients, and small businesses throughout the state of Texas, resulting in a negative patient experience, decreased patient flow, increased barriers to care, and bottom-line revenue loss. Thank you again for your time and the opportunity to testify.
Thanks for your testimony. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman in the middle, you said you're with Marshawn Eyewear?
Yes, sir.
So when I go online and I look at VSP Vision, it has Marshawn listed underneath it. So you're with VSP. All three of y'all are with VSP, correct?
That's correct, sir.
That's correct.
Okay, so the three of y'all are with the same company, and Marshawn is a subsidiary of VSP, correct?
Right, it is owned by VSP, correct.
Okay. I was just trying to identify, make sure, because at some point it seemed like you were independent, but it seems like you're all part of the same similar parent company. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for these witnesses? Very good. Thank you very much. We'll now call Julian Roberts, Clifton Bergfeld, and Haley Ellington Buckles. Chair calls Julian Roberts, Clifton Bergfeld, Haley Ellington Buckles. All right, welcome. When you get situated there, we'll start over here on my left and your right. So please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address House Bill 1696. My name is Haley Ellington Buckles, and I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for Versant Health. Versant Health is the parent company of Block Vision of Texas, which is a single-service HMO, and also Superior Vision and Davis Vision, which are third-party administrators that administer vision plans in Texas. We stand in opposition to House Bill 1696 as currently drafted. I live in San Antonio, Texas, and Versant Health has about 114 employees living in the state. We also cover or administer vision benefits for over 2.8 million Texans. We believe the bill has unintended consequences that hurts Texas employers and employees who rely on vision managed care companies to help control costs and deliver innovative vision benefits, and will overall drive up premiums and member out-of-pocket costs. Specifically, Section 6 and Section 8 seeks to limit managed care plans from establishing fee schedules to control costs, including doctors that do not use in-network optical laboratories. The use of in-network optical laboratories can improve the quality of optical products, decrease turnaround time, and reduce costs. Also, Section 7, as proposed, these provisions will prohibit plans from requiring optometrists to disclose medical or diagnosis information that can be used to enhance the value and impact of a routine eye exam. As an example, if an optometrist identifies risk factors or potential symptoms associated with a medical condition such as diabetes, the plan may not be able to any longer offer and share this information to determine programs and other resources available to the members. In addition, the bill prohibits that plans require optometrists and therapeutic optometrists to include a patient's glasses prescription, even though plans may need this information to administer certain vision benefits. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of Versant Health's concerns.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and go ahead.
Good evening, Chairman Hughes, Vice Chairman Paxton, and members of the committee. My name is Clifton Bergfeld. I'm the Director of Regulatory Compliance and Counsel for IMED, a national managed vision care organization. We stand in opposition to House Bill 1696 as currently composed. IMED currently administers vision benefits for over 4.4 million Texans through a network of approximately 4,200 optometrists and ophthalmologists throughout the state. Additionally, IMED and our parent company, EssilorLuxottica, employs 5,100 Texans. We believe that the passage of HB 1696 would adversely affect public health in the state of Texas by reducing the value of vision care benefits and limiting access to eye care providers. Many of the studies show that consumers with vision care benefits get their eyes examined more frequently and update their prescription eyewear more often. We believe that several provisions in HB 1696 would reduce these important behaviors. The bill currently prohibits vision plans from collecting and sharing critical medical information gathered during the course of a covered eye exam. Vision plans share this critical information with enrollees, medical plans, and disease management organizations, which help to identify at-risk members and provide critical data points to other healthcare professionals involved in the treatment plan and management of these patients' health. This jeopardizes the critical work of state wellness initiatives, employer-sponsored disease management programs, and poses a significant challenge to the HEDIS program, potentially affecting Texas Medicare and Medicaid recipients. As well, we believe the bill as currently drafted in Section 3, subsection 8, would require both the vision plan and the optometrist to unintentionally violate HIPAA, which, as we know, is a strict liability federal statute. Further, the bill would also prohibit vision plans from identifying any optometrist differently from another optometrist. We believe that enrollees deserve transparency when selecting an eye care provider and know that not all optometrists provide the same services. Allowing vision plans to indicate these differences, whether in quality, performance, available equipment, or services offered, should not be considered discrimination, but rather these differentiations should be made readily available to enrollees as a tool to make informed decisions. In summary, we oppose HB 1696 because we believe the numerous provisions in the bill have unintended consequences of reducing access to eye care for Texans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, and we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Good evening. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Chairman Hughes and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to address HB 1696. My name is Julian Roberts. I'm the Executive Director for the National Association of Vision Care Plans. NAVCP members consist of 16 vision care plans that provide vision benefits to over 18 million here in the state of Texas. We stand in opposition to HB 1696 as currently drafted. The vision benefits, the vision industry is a consumer product as consumers seek to manage their out-of-pocket costs for vision correction, frames, and lenses. On behalf of consumers, vision plans negotiate arrangements with eye care professionals for discounts to ensure consumers' out-of-pocket costs are protected. In return, the plans direct insureds to the providers agreeing to the arrangements. Plans also credential these providers to ensure that the providers have an active license, that they have adequate coverage for their practice, and they do not have any sanctions to ensure that consumers are being directed to qualified providers. Plans do the same with labs in their networks, negotiating steep discounts as well as strict performance standards in regards to turnaround times and limits on errors and defects. 1696 limits vision care plans' ability to negotiate contracts with providers, optical labs, and lens suppliers. Data from 3 of our largest members in the state of Texas says that the increased cost for your constituents could be as high as 40% and could potentially double a consumer's out-of-pocket cost. 1696 will also lower access to care by about 10 to 15% to your constituents in rural areas. Patients will lose assurance and confidence in their optical labs, products used, and high-quality measures. Mr. Chairman, if it is okay, may I finish? I only have a couple of more points.
Finish this thought, please, because we still have a lot of witnesses left tonight.
When this bill was heard in the House, there were 10 organizations in opposition, including health plans and ophthalmologists. The optometrists met with those organizations and amended the language to exclude them from the bill. If 1696 is not right for ophthalmologists and other healthcare providers, then why is it right for optometrists? If 1696 is not right for other insurance plans, then why is it not right? Then why is it right for vision care plans? If these provisions are not good for other types of insurance plans and healthcare provider types, then why is it only good for vision plans? It's not. This is a carve-out bill that picks and chooses winners and losers in the marketplace. Please don't let the 18 million Texans lose by raising their vision care cost in the state of Texas. And we oppose, of course, HB 1696. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, I'm so sorry. I didn't miss your name.
I'm sorry?
I missed your name.
Julian Roberts, Executive Director.
Mr. Roberts, you're the Executive Director of the association of which all the health plans, and you said how many health plans are there nationwide?
There are 16 vision care plans that are members of our association. There's probably another 4 or 5 other organizations.
If you would be so kind to provide us a little information about the association and the members, because my concern is that as I noticed when I looked up the VSP organization, it had it was obviously the health plan. It owned the optometry, or the place where you get your glasses, and it probably contracts with an optometrist. And so I think you said you were Luxottica? Yes, sir. And Luxottica is also the maker of Ray-Ban and some other glass manufacturers. So my concern is, as I see the integration, the vertical integration of so many different things, what I see is a loss of independent providers. And that's my concern. I want to see neighborhood optometrists be able to be there and be able to get on a health plan without being forced to do certain things. So I'm open to hearing from y'all. I'm open to hearing more about, I've heard transparency mentioned several times. I think we need to have real transparency. But I want to know, you mentioned initially in the House side who was for, who was against. At this point, it seems like it's optometrists versus big health plans. And so I just want to get to the bottom of it so we can distinguish. I'm not a fan of these industry fights. At the end of the day, all I care is the million people that I represent and the 30 million people in Texas, that they have an option to have independence in the best ability to get the best advice for their course of health care. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, thank you. Senator Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
appreciate everyone being here and your testimony. You made a couple of comments here a moment ago about costs and costs going up with this kind of plan. Can you, that's a general statement. Can you really be specific and elaborate on that for us so we have an understanding?
Yes, as you, even in medical plans, regardless of whether you're talking about vision or medical plans and you're negotiating arrangements and discounts with providers, you may have to actually pay a little bit more in the rural area marketplace because there's less competition, to ensure that you have access and coverage in those rural areas. In a more metropolitan area, you may have a little bit lower reimbursement rate because there is more competition. And when you get to providers that may be in a retail location, due to the fact that they're a different setup, they have more options, we may even have a lower reimbursement rate in a retail setting than we do necessarily for practice. So in this bill, where you're looking to make sure you do not discriminate regardless of the environment in which the provider is in, we're either going to have to lower the rural area, which means that we may lose access in that area, or we may have to raise the cost to keep that rural area and pay more in the metropolitan area, which is going to make premiums go up in regards to that to cover that increased cost.
I guess from my perspective, it seems when you have independent small business optometrists, you've got more competition, which ultimately is good for consumers.
Correct.
Whether or not we're talking about vision or any topic under the sun. And so I guess that's where I disagree with your premise in some of these rural communities and so forth. I understand your commentary broadly, but I really think that, if we're getting rid of, which is ultimately what's happening, it's really the corporate practice of medicine, as you're getting rid of some of the independent optometrists. To me, competition goes in the wrong direction, as opposed to the market where you want more independence alongside corporations and so forth that are out there in the marketplace. So that's my fundamental challenge, I guess, in question. I'd like to get more data, if you can give some specifics about really what you're seeing in terms of cost. You guys make a lot of commentary, and I appreciate you being here very much, spending the day with us about what it will do to price. I just don't see, I'd like to see real data, and not just hyperbole about this and that generically. So to the extent that you can provide us with some real data, that would be very beneficial, I think, in the process for myself and my colleagues on the committee. And then I think, Dr. Deegan, if you don't mind, heard your testimony, I think, effectively first in this process this evening. We've now had 6 or 7 folks on the other side. We know this bill came out of the House, I think, unanimously in support of the bill. Give us your perspective, again, just to refresh us on the role of the independent optometrist, effectively playing the role of being a small business, and competition, and ultimately providing best outcome for patients. Can you just kind of elaborate and compare and contrast your initial thoughts and what you've heard here this evening as well, just for everybody's benefit?
Sure, Senator, thank you. I do think that robust competition for services in any industry, especially our eye care industry, will keep costs down. I think independent practice is not just a small business owner, which can compete with a large conglomerate, but if you practice next to a Vision Works, like some of our representatives tonight represented, if that doctor practices next to that corporation, they still should remain independent of the profit interests of that entity that might sell you your glasses. And so I think that's important to remember. I think a couple of accuracies about identifying providers differently. The bill really says that you just can't identify providers differently based on what they purchase. So if it sees fit to identify providers that see children or that take handicapped individuals, that still is allowed. And so I think we have made some changes along the way that are good for the bill and good for Texas patients.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions for any of our witnesses? Thank you each for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1696? Very well. Public testimony is closed.
Mr. Chairman, I know public testimony is closed. I just wanted to address a question or an...
So to the witnesses, thank you. You're excused. Thank you all for being here. Mr. Menendez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Point brought up by our colleague. Yes, thank you all very much. So just a little easy research. Luxottica's vertically integrated company has been described as a monopoly. It designs, manufactures, distributes, and retails its eyewear brands through its companies that it owns, such as LensCrafters, Sunglass Hut, Pearl Vision, Target Optical, and Glasses.com. Completely integrated. So it doesn't make sense, like you said, that if you exclude, it almost makes it impossible for the independent optometrist to compete.
Well, that's effectively my concern.
Yes,
Senator.
I was validating your concern.
I mean, again, at the end of the day, look, I mean, we all love companies that are large and vertically integrated. I mean, in any industry, I think that's great. I don't like seeing practices that stifle independent competition and the small business from being able to be successful.
100%.
I think that's fundamentally where we come down.
I agree.
Thank you, Senators. So the bills are pending at this time, and we will bless you. We'll, for the bills we don't get to tonight, we'll plan on having we'll have an announcement about moving the bills very shortly. So the bills left pending at this time. The chair now lays out House Bill 1243. That's Representative Hefner's bill that I'm sponsoring. House Bill 1243. I think folks here will recall during the second called session of the 87th legislature, there was an amendment added to Senate Bill 1 that affected the penalty for illegal voting, taking it from a second-degree felony to a Class A misdemeanor. This was discussed in this committee and on the Senate floor at some length some weeks ago, more than 2 times, Senator. I understand. And, illegal voting has been a felony for almost 50 years. It was codified from a crime-specific punishment range to a felony category in 1975. Senate Bill 2 was the Senate bill we considered. House Bill 1243, the bill before us, would return the offense to a second-degree felony. That's all the bill does. It's simple and straightforward, and I'll yield for your questions. Very well. We'll open public testimony, and the chair calls Katya Arisman, Ed Johnson, Emily Eby French, and Dr. Susana Carranza. Those are the 4 witnesses that we have registered wishing to testify on, for or against. It's Katya Arisman, Emily Eby French, Dr. Susana Carranza, and Ed Johnson. If anyone else wishes to testify on, for or against House Bill 1243, please make your way to the kiosk outside and register electronically, or visit with Ms. Babb at the table. Welcome. And so whenever you're ready, we'll start over here on my left, your right. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Hughes, Vice Chair Paxton, and the committee for hearing testimony. My name is Katya Arisman. I represent Common Cause Texas and our over 50,000 members across the state, and we are against this bill. At its core, this bill is a problem in search of a solution and poses real threats for intimidating and scaring voters who may be worried about navigating the elections process and now fear making a mistake or navigating this process incorrectly might cost them 2 to 20 years in prison. No evidence and investigations done by the already funded Election Integrity Division in the Office of Attorney General has pointed to the need to increase this penalty that this committee and this body has already agreed less than 20 months ago to change in 2021. Our argument would be if this change in the penalty was ineffective, we would have statistically significant increases in arrests to show over that 20-month period. Unfortunately, fortunately really for elections, between January 2020 and September 2022, records show that the Office of Attorney General's unit opened 390 cases and only brought 5 convictions over the period of which 20 million votes were cast. Additionally, there's clear racial impact and disparity in the continued investigation within this unit if we continue to look for more cause, insofar as a report from the ACLU of Texas showed that 72% of the prosecutions brought from 2015 to 2021 were against Black and Hispanic Texans. Additionally, this bill poses a concern with the backlog of existing cases in the carceral system, where tens of thousands of voters are waiting for their discharge paper to know if they would be enfranchised within the months that could take them to get their notice of eligibility and then potentially risk navigating this new harm. To conclude, because House Bill 1243 adds undue increases of criminal penalties to the election code with no evidence to support the current threat being changed, being needed, or being ineffective at curbing illegal voting, and because this bill risks disparate racial impact in its intimidation and prosecution of Black and brown Texans, we urge the committee to oppose this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Eby French, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
My name is Emily Eby French. I'm a staff attorney at the Texas Civil Rights Project, and I'm here to testify against HB 1243 and its attempt to increase the penalty for illegal voting or attempted illegal voting. I'll say much of what my colleague Katya said, maybe not as fast, but I'll try. Just over 1 year ago, the 87th Legislature's anti-voter omnibus election bill, SB1, went into effect. It lowered the penalty for this offense. Since that time, there's been no apparent corresponding increase in illegal voting in Texas, which remains minimal at most, under the current penalty. Lowering the penalty did not, in fact, cause Texans to try illegally voting more often. How does it serve Texans to increase this penalty now? The current penalty is already serious. A Class A misdemeanor is the most serious category of misdemeanor, exposing people convicted of such offenses to a fine of up to $4,000 and or up to 1 year in a county jail. An entire year in a county jail is already sufficient to deter illegal voting, as it has done in the last 16 months since SB1 took effect. Since the behavior that this law is presumably targeting is not on the rise with a lower penalty, it makes no sense to increase the penalty. At the same time as it would do nothing to further deter illegal voting, it will waste tax dollars to further incarcerate people unnecessarily and make voting in Texas scarier than it already is. We ask you not to report this bill favorably. Thank you.
Thanks for your testimony. Mr. Johnson, welcome back. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Ed Johnson, and I'm here for HB 1243. I will tell you there have been many brave Americans that have fought and died for my right to vote. And I think that stealing my right to vote is a very serious crime. I can't think of hardly any other crimes worse than that, to take away that right from me that people died for. I do believe that it should be a felony. It's a very serious offense to steal someone's vote. When I was working for tax collector Assessor Betancourt, after every election, we put together a list of people that committed election offenses and gave them to the county DA's office. And unfortunately, the ones that were just misdemeanors, they told me, we don't have the staff or the time to get to these to work them. And they never were worked, and they never were prosecuted. The only ones they would be able to take time to get are the felony offenses. So by moving everything to a misdemeanor, they never see the light of day. And these are very serious offenses, and I think they should carry the appropriate penalty.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for the witnesses? Ms. Erzman, Ms. Ibby French, Mr. Johnson, thank you each for being here. You're excused. And is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1243? Very well. Public testimony is closed, and the bill is left pending at this time. For our final bill of the evening, Chair lays out House Bill 18. House Bill 18 filed, authored by Representative Slauson, and I'm honored to be the Senate sponsor of House Bill 18. The matters involving this bill have been discussed, similar matters tonight, and certainly on everyone's mind. It seems increasingly we're still getting used to having the world at our fingertips, with our phones, with our computers. We're so reliant on them. Powerful tool for adults, the internet, but an overwhelming place for children, as we've already heard tonight, been reminded. Last week, the Senate passed House Bill 4, which proponents are rightfully calling the strongest data privacy and protection law in the country. And in that bill, data associated with minors is treated with heightened protection. So we're already starting from a baseline of a new and greater level of protection for kids' data. That's good news. That's where we began, even before we reached the bill before us. In addition to that data, though, a child's experience online can have very real consequences beyond the digital world. The risks are much broader than traditional social media as well. Much of the harmful content comes from message boards or forums where people anonymously talk to one another. Parents are the first and strongest protection for kids online, but sadly their tools are often limited. They are limited. House Bill 18 is designed to protect kids online in several ways, but specifically through empowering parents to have a greater awareness of a child's online life and to have more control over what their child sees and does on the internet. There's a committee substitute, which I now lay out. The substitute requires a website to ask anyone who sets up an account for their age when creating an account. If the user is under 18, is evidenced either by their answer to the questions or by a parent telling the site the child is a minor, then the site is instantly required to provide a series of strong protections to the account and to provide a list of tools and powers to parents in relation to that child's account on the site. Under the substitute, once a child reports as a minor, they cannot go back and change their age to escape the account limitations. If the user is a minor, the site must do these things if the user is a minor. Limit the collection and use of personal information associated with the minor. Prevent the digital service provider from sharing, disclosing, or selling a known minor's personal information. Prevent collection of precise geolocation data by the digital service. Prevent the display of targeted advertising to the known minor by the digital service. Prevent the minor from making purchases or engaging in other financial transactions through the digital service. And of course, addressing the access to pornography, as we've already discussed, Senator Paxton's bills and other important bills before us. Sites will also be required to provide parental tools to do the following: control the minor's privacy and account settings, restrict the ability of a minor to make purchases and financial transactions, monitor the amount of time the minor spends using the digital service, allow the parent to review and download all personal information being retained by the digital service provider that is associated with the parent's known minor, and delete any personal information associated with the parent's known minor that's been collected or processed by the digital service provider. The bill protects minors from receiving targeted advertisements and requires new disclosures of how a site's algorithms target content to minors. We also added components from Senator Paxton's bill that will require age verification for anyone who visits a pornographic site so that children don't get exposed to that harmful material, and a bill Representative Hull authored to have the TEA create new standards for apps and filters on devices that schools issue to students. This is all enforced by the Attorney General, but anyone can bring a claim for an injunction to stop a site from violating the law. Taken together, the several pieces of this legislation will protect kids and provide new and stronger tools for parents to make sure they know what their children are doing online. That's what the bill and the substitute do, and I'm happy to yield for your questions. Thank you very much. We'll begin with invited testimony on House Bill 18. The chair calls Maureen Molak. Testifying for the bill's invited testimony. We'll then have some, looking forward to some public testimony. I thank everyone for their indulgence and patience as we got through a big agenda. Many pieces of legislation still need to be moving through the process. So thank everyone for working with us. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for being here. Please introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Chairman Hughes and members, I am Maureen Molak, testifying for HB 18 on behalf of myself and as the co-founder of David's Legacy Foundation. My son David is the inspiration behind David's Law, the Texas cyberbullying legislation many of you on this committee helped become law in 2017. I am also a member of the National Online Harms Prevention Work Group through Screen Time Action Network at Fair Play, and a social media reform advocate who works with parents across Texas and the nation whose children have suffered or died from online-induced harms, including the online purchase of drugs laced with fentanyl, eating disorders, dangerous online challenges, cyberbullying, sextortion, and human trafficking. I could have filled this room with those parents. My son David was a typical 16-year-old who was glued to his phone and was an avid gamer. Neither David nor my husband Matt and I knew how addictive and manipulative these platforms could be until it was too late for us. We were desperately seeking help when the cyberbullying and online threats that targeted David exacerbated an already crisis situation that left David feeling helpless and hopeless. David died by suicide on January the 4th of 2016. For the past 7 years, I've been helping Texas parents and schools keep kids safe online. They are struggling with children's addictive use of social media and devices, online dangers that infiltrate classrooms, the near impossibility of removing content harmful to children's mental health, and being ill-equipped with the current safety features of social media platforms and the devices children use to access them. Keeping our children safe online is a David versus Goliath fight. And we need Goliath, the social media companies, to step up to the plate to help ensure the online safety of Texas youth. Sophisticated social media companies are in the business of collecting and selling data. They know who we are, what we like or dislike, where we are, and with whom we communicate. What HB 18 is asking them to do is to use these same resources to better equip parents with tools, so the parent, not big tech, is in control of what is best for their minor child's online safety, and for these companies to take reasonable steps to prevent and mitigate online harms to Texas minors. It is time for them to become part of the solution in protecting our state's most precious resource, our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here, for all you continue to do on this. Senator Menendez.
Just a word to say thank you again for everything you've done. All these years, you've dedicated your life to help others, and in a way, you have actually. It's not in a way you've taken a terrible tragedy that befell your family, and you're helping save other families' children from having to go through the same thing.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Certainly couldn't do it without y'all's help.
Senators, any other questions for Ms. Mollack? Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open public testimony on House Bill 18. The chair calls Servando Esparza. Tom Giovanetti. Zachary Whiting. Megan Morrow. Again, the chair calls Servando Esparza. Mr. Esparza was here earlier. We have Tom Giovanetti, Megan Morrow, Zach Whiting, and the chair calls John McCord. All right. Right, let's go ahead and get started. On my left, your right. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome. Thanks for staying up with us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and you guys have been gracious in thanking us for being here. I thank you guys for being here. I've been on the other side of the table as a former state senator in Iowa, and I know the mental effort it takes for y'all to stay up so late, juggling so many things. So thank you. I'm Zach Whiting, Senior Fellow and Policy Director at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I have written testimony in fervent support of HB 18 as engrossed. A draft of the committee substitute I saw today. I had two things in there that gave me a little bit of pause. The first one is that it was unclear to whom the bill applies. So in the bill as engrossed and in the committee substitute, it defines a digital service very broadly to capture nearly all of online activity. But in the draft I saw, there's nearly 3 pages of carve-outs, and it, sort of picks commercials and winners and losers at the expense of parents and children, and that part was a concern. And then second, in subchapter B, which makes up the bulk of the committee substitute, it's far less inclusive than the engrossed version of the bill. It shifts many of the burdens from the digital service provider over to parents and children. The requirement of a child to register their age and then a parent to subsequently come in and challenge that, again, shifts that burden from what would otherwise be, under the current regime, companies seeking and obtaining verifiable parental consent, which is the current process under COPPA. Second, by removing the willful disregard component of the definition of a known minor, which was in the engrossed version, that pretty much gives zero incentive for companies to go out and find the actual age of a user. And then the last piece, I see my red light blinking, is the duty to develop a strategy to prevent harm. That's significantly different than the duty to exercise reasonable care. We shouldn't, as we've heard in the other testimonies, we shouldn't allow big tech to continue to police themselves, and merely asking them to sit down and plan about a plan doesn't do as much as affirmatively exercising a duty to exercise reasonable care. Sorry for going over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Good evening. My name is Megan Morrow. I'm here on behalf of the Texas Association of Business, so we're the Texas State Chamber of Commerce. We're testifying on HB 18. We represent businesses, small, medium, and large businesses in every industry sector and our local partners, chamber partners across the state. We'd like to thank Chairman Hughes for his work on this bill and for the work of this committee on these issues. The members of our association have been working together in convening stakeholder groups surrounding data privacy and online consumer protections, which are important issues for employers and businesses across our state. And we have also convened stakeholder meetings with lawmakers to work towards the common goal to protect consumers, including consumers that are minors. I do want to thank the chairman and this committee for passing HB 4 from the Senate chamber, which provides protections for minors under the age of 13, requiring that data of a minor is treated as sensitive, therefore allowing a legal guardian of a child to exercise consumer rights on their behalf, like obtaining data, correcting data, deleting data, and opting out of targeted advertising. It also prohibits controllers from processing a minor's data without obtaining parental consent in accordance with COPPA. So again, I do want to thank the members of this committee and Chairman Hughes for your work on this bill and for allowing us to comment today.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Tom Giovanetti. I'm the president of the Institute for Policy Innovation. We are a 35-year-old conservative free market think tank based in Dallas. We were founded by former Congressman Dick Armey. We champion limited government, individual responsibility, free markets, and individual liberty. We go where our principles take us, even if it makes us unpopular, even if it makes us the skunk at the picnic. And unfortunately, that's why today I must testify against HB 18. I am under no delusion that I will persuade you. I know the bill will pass successfully out of committee. I know that it will pass through the Senate, and I know the governor will sign it. But I want to go on record explaining to you the problems with the legislation so that when it fails judicial review, you might at least hear the echo of my words in your ears. One of my favorite intellectual heroes is Tom Sowell, economist Tom Sowell from the Hoover Institution. And Tom Sowell's famous for a couple of things that are relevant here. He says good intentions are not enough. In fact, he wrote a whole book called Good Intentions Are Not Enough. But even more importantly, Thomas Sowell says there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And he wrote an entire book about that. We cannot be so naive as to think that we can solve problems 100% by passing a law and that there will be no negative trade-offs, because there are always trade-offs to everything. For instance, I served 10 years ago on the Attorney General Child Online Safety Task Force, and we learned that you can, in fact, verify identity online. It's very easy to do. It requires you to submit your driver's license number. It requires you to submit your physical address so that property tax record databases can be checked, so that driver's license databases can be checked. It requires you to submit your social security number. We can verify identity very easily, and it requires the submission of personally identifiable information, exactly the kind of information that the privacy bill bars from being collected. But yet this bill mandates the collection of that information. You cannot verify age without verifying identity. Do you know what age verification without identity verification looks like? Go to the Tito's Vodka website, and there's a splash page, and it says, "Are you 21? Yes, no." And if you're 12, you can click on "Yes, I'm 21," and you're in. And there's nothing in this legislation that prevents that from happening. In fact, this legislation will encourage minors to lie about their age because that's how they avoid the gauntlet of HB 18. That's 10% of the problems with this bill, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Have you seen the committee substitute?
I have.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Go ahead, introduce yourself, and give us your testimony.
John McCord on behalf of the Texas Retailers Association, testifying neutral tonight. I'm going to assume that given the hour that brevity will be appreciated, so I'm going to forego some prepared remarks and just kind of give an overview. When the bill was first laid out in the House committee a few months ago, TRA testified in opposition to it. As every piece of legislation does, it has evolved over the last few weeks. We worked with Representative Slosson's office and certainly appreciate the conversations that we had there, and then continued those conversations here with Chairman Hughes and his staff, where with the committee sub that was laid out tonight, we were finally able to get to a point where we are no longer opposed but are here neutral, because I've visited with several of your offices. We wanted to come and make sure that the TRA was on the record as being neutral. If you would like to discuss any of those changes that kind of we're able to move that position, I'm happy to do so, but happy to answer any questions y'all have.
Thank you. Senator, is there any questions for any of our witnesses? Senator Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You talked about carve-outs. Are you able to maybe just describe the differences between, I guess, the engrossed version and the current version?
Yeah, so the engrossed version used the same definition for a digital service, just pretty much encompassed the entire internet, websites, apps, and all the like. There were added in, as engrossed, certain, let's say, exemptions for small businesses, covered healthcare entities, government, and the like. Those are included in the committee substitute that I reviewed as well. But there's a whole other list that goes beyond that half page or so that covers, two other pages worth of stuff. And so it seems like it's sort of cabining toward a definition of it applies to maybe social media or social media light bills, but then goes in and exempts out things like, entertainment, sports, e-commerce type websites. So the difficulty of the definition in 3 pages of carve-outs, and in my judgment, makes it difficult to figure out to whom it actually applies. Rather than the engrossed version, it's very clear. It applies to everybody except these sort of 7 clear exceptions.
May I comment on that?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions, Senators? Comment on what? Did he have a question to Senator Paxton's and answered her question?
Yes, he was just answering the same question as well.
Yeah. While my colleague from TPPNF and I disagree on whether or not the bill's a good idea or not, he's exactly correct about the carve-outs. As I read the bill, TikTok gets a carve-out in this legislation. The worst actor of all gets a carve-out here because of the language in 509-0021. It defines the people covered here, the primary function of connecting users to allow them to interact with each other. So that exempts TikTok. People don't interact over TikTok. They simply watch videos. So TikTok gets a carve out as I read that language. I would think that's a problem.
Senators, any other questions for the witnesses?
No other questions.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you all for being here. Another day with us.
And While they're leaving, I'll note that TikTok is not carved out, and smug is about the worst approach to persuading a committee around here, but that's okay. Keep it up. We have some more witnesses coming. The chair calls Kelsey Strofert, Lee Parsley, Lisa Kaufman, and Servando Esparza. Servando Esparza, Kelsey Strofert, Lee Parsley, Lisa Kaufman. All right, welcome. We'll begin on my left, your right. Introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
Good evening. Kelsey Erickson Stroifert on behalf of the Texas Restaurant Association. We are also testifying neutral. Really just wanted to thank Senator Hughes and his staff for a lot of work in a very short time period to make sure that we're protecting who we need to protect and putting those parameters in place, but not creating unintended consequences for everything like a restaurant website, ordering pizza from Domino's, right? Those sorts of just regular commerce that's not directed at minors, not harmful to minors. We just want to make sure we're not inadvertently pulling that into that bill. So appreciate the work and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Go ahead, introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Kaufman. I'm here on behalf of the Texas Civil Justice League, and I too want to thank Senator Hughes and his staff for his hard work on this. Particularly, we want to thank him for tightening the definition and making it clear in terms of what our duty is, and working with us on the enforcement provisions, which we find acceptable now. We look forward to continuing working with your committee on this as it moves to the floor.
Thank you. Senators, is there any questions for the witnesses? Very good. Thank you for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 18? Very well. We'll close public testimony, and the bill's going to be left pending. Do you?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
just wanted to clarify one item for the record. I think your intention, obviously, is that all of these social media companies, be it TikTok, be it Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all of them
Not only the intent, but
are all
plain-
now in it. And so I just wanted to clarify that for the record.
Not only the
There's
intent, but the plain language
lack
of the bill.
clarity in that regard, but I think all of them are in as your intent. That's what the substitute does in fact call for.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's important. Thank you for, I don't know where that came from. It's not in the bill. Thanks for the clarification. Any other questions, members, before we leave the bill pending? Bill's left pending at this time. That's completes our agenda. If there's no other business, the Committee on State Affairs stands in recess up to the call of the chair. Good evening.